All right, let's get it. Drive time. Wednesday afternoon, 8 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Really nice day today after some rain and some cold weather yesterday, to remind you that we are high speed ahead to cold weather period. But about 74 degrees, sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah, right outside of our Broadway media studios. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass after co-hosting our midday show. I should say hosting our midday show. Sean O'Connell out for the rest of the week. He'll be back in town next week in time for game week for Utah. It's a bye week for Utah. Sean taking some time off, so Porter doing double duty today on the station. Appreciate his work. Happy Wednesday to you, halfway through that work week and one day closer to the weekend, one day closer to football. We've got a lot of injury updates in the world of the NFL. Looks like Lamar Jackson will sit this weekend. Brock Purdy is questionable as we sit here today. Looks like Jaden Daniels is going to give it a go for Washington. He'll be back out on the field. We have a quarterback change in Cleveland where Joe Flacco hits the bench. Dylan Gabriel will get the start. Shedeur Sanders is your third stringer still in Cleveland. So we're high speed ahead to week 5 of the NFL with some Thursday night football. As I referenced, Brock Purdy at this point is still questionable, as the Niners will be at SoFi to take on the Rams, divisional matchup there. So we'll talk some pro football on the show today, get you ready for a busy weekend ahead in the NFL. And, of course, one eye on the world of college football. As I referenced, the Utes on a bye, a get-right game last week against West Virginia, and hopefully a get-right bye week with several players nursing injuries. Give you an update on that and kind of the overall health of the program, as we are inching, believe it or not, closer and closer to nearly halfway through the college football season. But a lot of big games took place last week, both in the Big 12 and nationally, and it's a big weekend ahead in the world of college football. BYU welcomes in West Virginia. Now, an interesting trend. I don't think it's germane to the outcome. BYU should roll, but that line opened up as BYU minus 20.5. And as we sit here today, BYU is an 18.5-point favorite. So any money that's come in on the game has actually gone towards West Virginia. I don't think it will be an anxious night on Friday night for BYU fans at LaVell Edwards Stadium. I anticipate BYU continuing to stay clean. They are 4-0 and 1-0 in conference after going down to Boulder and taking care of Colorado after a bit of an auspicious start. So as we continue to talk about on the show, as we move towards week 6 in college football and nearly halfway through the season, we got to find a way to move from observation and conclusion to try to figure out who these teams are. With a team like BYU, it's tough. I don't think they have been tested, but they have passed every test that has been thrown their way so far. I think it's probably fair to say that Utah football has been tested once, and they didn't pass it. Texas Tech came into Salt Lake and took care of the Utes. It doesn't mean that there isn't everything to play for. One conference loss typically does not a season make. But we'll look at a busy weekend in the Big 12. We'll look ahead to what I perceive to be the most important 3 weeks, including this week, of the season for Utah football, as we're getting ready to welcome in Arizona State to Rice-Eccles Stadium for a massive Big 12 clash 2 Saturdays from now, 8:15 p.m. Mountain Time kick. That game will be on ESPN on TV. And, of course, we will have 10 hours of game day coverage for you. Porter will get going just after 4 o'clock. And then going to be another late night for our guy Riles and Scott Mitchell, Stevenson, Sylvester. The broadcast team will take you through probably close to 2 a.m. would be my guess. So make sure to set your clocks and set your alarms to make us part of your Utah football game day coverage. And, of course, after Arizona State, it is a road trip about 40 miles down south to take on the BYU Cougars. Major League Baseball wild card. There's one thing Red Sox fans and Yankee fans have in common, as we can say Aaron bleeping Boone, with some wild managerial decisions yesterday that allowed the Red Sox to take a 3-1 win over the Yankees. The Yankees loaded the bases in the bottom of the ninth, and then Aroldis Chapman shut things down. Giancarlo Stanton couldn't even get his bat on a ball to at least get one run in. The Dodgers rolled because the Dodgers are the best team in baseball, and they also have the most expensive roster. Shohei Ohtani with a leadoff home run last night. And the Dodgers took care of the Reds very easily, 10-5. Cubbies beat the Padres yesterday 3-1. It was the Tigers 2-1 over the Guardians, and the aforementioned Red Sox beat the Yankees 3-1. So far today, we've got the Guardians up 6-1 on the Tigers, and that's top of the ninth now. The Padres have a 1-0 lead over the Cubbies, top of the fourth. And we are about 1 hour and 45 minutes away from first pitch in the Bronx, where the Yankees, after winning 8 straight games to close out the regular season, are staving off elimination against the Red Sox. The Red Sox are 9-1 in their last 10 games against the Yankees in the playoffs. So, see if the Yankees can stay alive tonight. Then your late-night game, I don't think the Reds have a prayer. Like I said, this was supposed to be the season of the Dodgers again. I still think it's going to be. Dodgers-Reds, 7 o'clock tonight on ESPN. A little bit of everything going on. High speed ahead to the final home match of the season for Real Salt Lake. The Colorado Rapids in town for a 7:30 Mountain Time kick Saturday night at America First Field. That game can be seen on Apple Television. They don't have radio of RSL anymore. It's pretty sad. But RSL, Colorado, and a must-win game for RSL should they want to be on the right side of that line of delineation come playoff time to at least get in the play-in game. Media Day a couple days ago for the Jazz and the rest of the National Basketball Association. Training camps opened across the landscape of pro basketball yesterday. So it's kind of that time of year. And the Mammoth are beginning preseason here. So their first preseason game is tomorrow against L.A., believe it or not. So there you go. We've got hockey, we've got basketball, we've got football, we've got soccer. We even have golf. The fallout from the Ryder Cup. Who will the next captain of the U.S. team be? Does the U.S. need to break it down and build it back up? Will Europe bring back Luke Donald for his third straight captaincy, something that we have not seen? We'll talk about that on the show today. Good guest list on a Wednesday afternoon. Speaking of golf, we will start things off with Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel. Rex has an excellent golf podcast. It has been highly consumed over the past week. Listen to it this morning. He interviewed the president or the CEO of the PGA of America, and they talked about the fan behavior at Bethpage, how you avoid that moving forward, and what's next when it comes to the captaincy and what the landscape of American golf looks like after Europe. Once again, Europe, I think it's 14-6 in the last 20 Ryder Cups. This is not a recent trend. Europe has been a better Ryder Cup side for a number of years now. So a good day to bring Rex in. We're also high speed ahead to our PGA event here in state. I believe it's the Utah Bank something or other. I'll get that right. Down at Black Desert in St. George. So we'll get Rex's take on the current state of golf. We'll do some NBA with Sarah Todd from the Deseret News, who asked the question of Walker Kessler concerning his thoughts of not being able to ink that contract extension, the main soundbite from Jazz Media Day that's kind of been making the rounds. Our buddy Jason Shepard, BYU TV, with Utah on a bye, will preview Utah, West Virginia with Shep today. Former producer of the Bill and Spence show for you old school Utah Sports Talk radio listeners back in the day here on this station. And then, then an hour of college football coverage with our buddy Chris Comrani from The Athletic on a Wednesday afternoon. It's Rex Hoggard. It's Sarah Todd. It is Jason Shepard. It's Chris Comrani. It's me, Spence Checketts. It's all of you, the great listeners on this Wednesday. And that guy who just hosted a 3-hour radio show.
What up?
And I was on my way in to do crosstalk, and James texted me and said, hey, Porter doesn't want to do crosstalk with you.
Yeah. Sorry.
What's up, man?
I did not want to.
Well, we usually do crosstalk on the station, and because you're hosting middays, you're like, no, I don't want to do it today?
I actually wanted to host crosstalk, but ran through the clock, did some timekeeping, some, paying the lights, doing some promos for some concerts and whatnot. So we got crosstalk for the next 4 hours.
Did you get all your hot takes out during midday, or do you have any hot takes loaded in the holster left?
Yes.
You have some hot takes left.
I got some hot takes for you.
Okay, what was the hottest of hot takes during the midday? I want the hottest Porter take during I listened to a little bit. I was running some errands today. Got my blood tested with our good friends out at Game Day Men's Health. Shout out. Make sure the T levels are where they need to be.
There you go.
But what was the hottest of the hot takes during middays today?
Well, I saw reports of Albert Pujols being the next manager in Anaheim. And upon entering the segment, I was skeptical and maybe against it. And 5 minutes later, I had, without any input from anyone else, I had talked myself into all in on Albert Pujols as the manager for the Angels. So
wow.
There you go.
That is a hot take. Breaking news, Brock Purdy is out tomorrow night at SoFi against the Rams. So if you're a fantasy football player, go pick up Mac Jones. He's going to start tomorrow for the Niners. Breaking news right out of the gates on a Wednesday afternoon. All right, our first guest, Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel. What's next for the U.S. Ryder Cup team? And we have a PGA event in a matter of weeks here in the state of Utah. But on a Wednesday afternoon, before we catch up with Rex, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Keep in mind, Prize Picks is the best way to win cash on the Broncos, on the Raiders, on the Niners, on the Jets, if you are a glutton for punishment. All football season long, just keep in mind which players you think are going to go off, which players are overhyped. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. So it's very easy to do. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And you don't have to worry about any of the other language or verbiage or learning things that other sports books ask you to learn. It's not very complex. So, for instance, like Saquon Barkley, more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. Tomorrow night, it's the Niners and the Rams. Puka Nacua, more or less than, with the way Puka's playing, it's probably like 160 yards. Easy. Things like that, very easy to do. And Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. If you want to pick more on Josh Allen's passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns, now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. Follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app. Copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. So step number 1 is you download the Prize Picks app today. You use the promo code ESPN700, and you're going to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. That's promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. It is good to be right. All right, Week 5 of the NFL gets going tomorrow, and unfortunately, what we have for NFL fans are simply injury updates. Lamar Jackson is out. Cooper Rush will start at quarterback for Baltimore. It does look like good news if you're a Washington Commanders fan. Jaden Daniels will actually play. Marcus Mariota goes back to the bench. And breaking news about 5 minutes ago, for the second time in 3 weeks, Brock Purdy is out for the Niners. Mac Jones is in as their starting quarterback. There's not an injury in Cleveland, but we have a new starting quarterback for the Browns. It is Dylan Gabriel. And Joe Flacco will go to the bench, but Joe Flacco is the backup while Shedeur Sanders is your number 3. So a lot of injury news, unfortunately, in the world of pro football. That's kind of where we're at when it comes to a lot of these quarterbacks. So Thursday Night Football, don't forget, you can hear the game on our radio station between the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. That game will get going right after we say goodnight. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Bye week for Utah football, so not a lot of news concerning the Utes. As we talked about yesterday with Riles, voice of the Utes, a get-right game against West Virginia, and now it's time for a get-right week before Arizona State rolls into town. Arizona State was as close to a consensus to win the conference preseason style as any other team. Now, the reality is we did not have a Big 12 preseason media poll, so we don't really know what the media would have done this year. But we're a bunch of morons, in case you guys haven't learned that by now. Last year, all of us thought Utah would win the thing. Oklahoma State would be there in the mix. And those two teams were near the bottom of the conference, while Arizona State and Brigham Young, two teams were picked near the bottom, finished near the top. But when it comes to Vegas odds, when it comes to media members that actually tried to take a stab at this thing, Arizona State was the team that most people thought, even with the loss of Cam Skattebo, who is now playing really well as a rookie for the New York Giants, getting the job as RB1. A lot of people thought Kenny Dillingham, after showing everybody what he could do a year ago at the helm, would be able to kind of jettison this thing back up to the top. Now, didn't start off great. A bad loss in Mississippi State and Starkville. Mississippi State might be the worst team in the SEC, at least certainly one of them. But really, since then, they've just been able to find a way to kind of do what BYU has done, and that is simply pass every test that's been thrown at them, even though style points haven't necessarily been at a premium. You don't learn anything against Texas State at home. Arizona State, no problem there. But they go down to Waco. They beat a Baylor team that a lot of people believe should be considered as a Tier 1 team in the Big 12. And then they welcome in a TCU team down in Tempe, and they handle their business 27-24. So Arizona State comes in undefeated in conference. They're one of two teams that have played two conference games, the other being Iowa State. And they are clean so far in their two conference games. They're 4-1 overall, and they've cracked the top 25. And obviously, revenge from the game a year ago on the mind for Utah. So it'll be interesting to see as we get closer to game time how Vegas kind of sets the odds for this thing, the over, under, and the spread. My guess is Utah is going to be a slight favorite. I think it'll be a little bit like the Texas Tech line. Obviously, that line did not prove to be anywhere near accurate with the outcome. But a big week this week for Coach Witt and Morgan Scalley and Jason Beck, getting some of these players as healthy as possible. We don't have updates for you guys because we don't get updates when it comes to injuries unless they're season ending. We know that Nate Ritchie was on the sideline in crutches. Jackson Benny left the game but did not go to the locker room. There's some other players dealing with some injuries. Every team is dealing with injuries right now, and hopefully Utah can take this downtime to get healthy, schematically kind of adjust a little bit, and get ready for not just a big game against Arizona State, but right now, starting Monday of this week, potentially the three biggest weeks of the season for Utah football, a bye week to get healthy, a home game against Arizona State, and then you go on the road to take on a BYU team that I think is good and has passed every test that's been thrown at them. The question is, what have we learned? Have they played anybody good? Probably not. The best team they played, Colorado, they went down to Boulder, had to scramble a bit to get back in it, eventually win the game. They're going to take on West Virginia Friday night in Provo, a game where they're favored by 18.5 points. Then they'll be on the road at Arizona prior to the Utah game, and that's a 6 o'clock p.m. Kick on the 11th. That's going to be on ESPN2. And then, of course, it is time for Utah and BYU. If I had to guess, I think BYU is probably undefeated coming into that game. Arizona is a school that and a team that's been a little bit up and down, and depending on the week, they look pretty solid. And then oftentimes they kind of look pretty anemic. They went down to Ames and got smoked by Iowa State. I do think Utah has a good chance to handle their business at Arizona State. If Utah can beat Arizona State, BYU stays clean. We probably have two top 20 teams in Provo coming up mid-October, which, of course, would make that game a lot of fun. All right, we'll get back to some college football. We have Chris Comrani live in studio. But what's next for the Ryder Cup team and the PGA Tour makes its way to Utah? Rex Hoggart from the Golf Channel is our first guest on a Wednesday edition of the program, halfway through that work week and one day closer to the weekend. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. I got Sarah Todd, hopping on the program today. Media day in the world of pro basketball. So we'll talk some NBA with Sarah. Back to college football. We'll preview BYU, West Virginia. Utah is on a bye, but a big weekend ahead in the Big 12. So we'll bring in Chris Comrani from The Athletic. But our next guest is not just a friend of the program, but I am now a fan of his podcast, as I was able to consume a bunch of it over the weekend. The Ryder Cup is behind us, but the storylines are still right in front of our face. Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel is our guest on a Wednesday afternoon. Rex, happy Wednesday, sir. How are you?
I couldn't be happier because, as you just pointed out, for us in the golf business, the Ryder Cup is the content gift that never stops giving. We're going to be talking about this for the next 2 years.
I've got to ask you, I referenced that I found your podcast this weekend. So I was traveling last week throughout the course of the Ryder Cup. I was on a family vacation. I'm not ashamed to admit my phone was in front of my face the entire time watching the tournament. Did you see quite an uptick in consumption? Because your golf podcast was like right on the front page when I was searching for content. Did you guys see a lot of additional ears and attention this weekend?
It really does, and I think we noticed that 2 years ago in Rome. The time difference certainly helped with the overseas Ryder Cups. But this one, I think what we learned is as long as there's a little bit of controversy, and there was plenty of that at that stage during the Ryder Cup, as long as it can somehow be explained that it's close, and I argue that it wasn't close until we got to Sunday. And then if you can get the headline right, I think that's where you kind of hit, because it seems like the last 3 days we did really well.
So it's funny you reference get the headline right, because I want to know just right off the top, what is the net headline? I mean, there's so many directions to go. You could talk about another European win. You can talk about an American comeback. You can talk about fan behavior. What is the Rex Hoggard net main headline takeaway from this Ryder Cup?
It's probably not the one that's going to get the most clicks, if I'm honest with you, because I keep going back to the idea that European team may go down as the greatest European team of all time when it comes to what they've been able to do, not just at this Ryder Cup, and they were dominant through at least 2 days this year at Bethpage, but it's 11 of the same guys who were on the team 2 years ago in Rome, and they boat raced the United States then. So it's a solid group who, for 2 days in team play, was absolutely untouchable. It was a masterclass. It was a clinic. They took it to the Americans in the format that they needed to, specifically force them, because the Americans just seemed to struggle in that one. And I would also argue the other side of that is Luke Donald, the captain of the European team, might go down as the greatest captain, either side, Europe or the United States. He has turned out to be the brilliant tactician that we thought he was. I know that's probably not the sexy headline. The sexy headline is those crowds were nuts.
Well, and I do want to get to the crowd behavior in a moment, but I want to focus on the golf, certainly, because, I thought it, and I've told you this before, I am a golf kind of convert like millions of others. I did not grow up playing. My grandfather was very into it. I was a basketball, football player. I always thought golf was boring, but now I'm older and I'm fascinated by it. I enjoy playing it. And the Ryder Cup, it's only the second time I've really consumed it. Rome was the first time. This was the second time. It is such compelling television, Rex. Like, you cannot take your eyes away from it. And you don't just have to be a golf fan, like if you're just a fan of sports. So as somebody that's been doing this for a long time, I want to ask you, what makes this tournament as compelling as it is and such a great TV show?
Well, first, I think you have the history. It goes back to 1927. But really, over the last 2 decades or so, it's been so close. It seems like it was a home and away situation, that the home team seemed to be the only real advantage that either team had. And on paper, it certainly looks like it this time as well. It was only a 2-point victory for the Europeans, despite what they were able to do in those first 2 sessions. And you're bringing in sort of the nationalistic pride. It's the United States against Europe. We see it over here. We certainly saw it last week at Bethpage, but it's just as strong when we're overseas. So I think that combination of things makes it as compelling, and I would argue the best event in all of golf, and one of the best events, I would argue, in sports. And then you sort of add the animosity that we've gotten over the last few years. If you and I would have had a conversation before the Ryder Cup 2 years ago in Rome, and you would have told me that Rory McIlroy almost got into a fight in the parking lot with an American caddy, I said, well, that just doesn't happen in golf. And same thing happened this time around. We had a group of caddies and players mixing up on Saturday afternoon because of a bit of a misunderstanding. You just don't get that in golf. That's probably why you didn't gravitate to it when you were younger, and I think that's why people love it so much.
So let's dig into this for a moment, and I'm just going to ask you, and again, this is me coming at it as a relative newcomer and not as educated as somebody like you. So What is fair to say about Keegan Bradley? What's fair to say about Keegan? Because my understanding is it was an out-of-the-box pick for the captainship. The narrative seems to be it was a make good for him being left off the team in Rome, and he wasn't necessarily politicking for it. I read that a lot of people didn't think it was the right choice. I've been impressed when I listened to interviews. I've been impressed certainly with his game. I mean, you can't deny that he had a hell of a season as a player. But now that we're kind of doing the post-mortem, what's a fair either criticism or just narrative around the Ryder Cup captain for the U.S., Keegan Bradley?
I think, to be fair, when we sat on the couch on Monday morning and started quarterback, exactly what Keegan Bradley might have done right, certainly what he did wrong. First and foremost, he admitted multiple times that he got the golf course set up wrong, and I really think that's the key issue here. And I know that sounds pretty simple. People on the outside thinking it's 18 holes, you got a tee box, you got a flag, what's the big deal? But that golf course is a U.S. Open major championship type venue, Bethpage Black. That's what they needed. They needed a U.S. Open Bethpage, or at the very least a PGA Championship Bethpage. And instead you got something closer to a normal PGA Tour event where you had to make a lot of birdies, and that just didn't fit Keegan's team. I think statistically he got that wrong. He admitted as much. So out of the gates, he's going to take a hit on that one. Out of the gates, he probably made some serious errors on some of his pairings for the team competition. On paper, many of those pairings probably look good. Harris English and Colin Morikawa probably matched up well when it came to the alternate shot format. But when they got beat badly on day one, that's usually when, as Mike Tyson would say, you get punched in the face and you got to come up with a different plan. Keegan didn't seem to have a different plan. He went with essentially the same lineup on Saturday morning, same as he did on Friday morning, and the result was the exact same. The United States lost 3 of the 4 matches. And so I think those two things, combined with maybe some of the brilliance that is Luke Donald, to be fair. Again, I can't lean into this enough, that there was plenty of things that Keegan did wrong, but I'm not quite sure he could have done enough right to overcome that team.
Yeah, and as JT said during the press conference when Keegan was being, really, he had his feet held to the fire by the media, JT finally took the mic and said what Keegan needed to do was make us make more putts, right? I mean, did it really come? So you referenced the setup to the golf course with Bethpage, and it felt like from a consumer standpoint, the way it was set up, it did turn into a putting contest. Does JT have a point? Like it simply just came down to the Europeans making more putts than the Americans?
I think it always comes down to that. To be fair, I think the Ryder Cup always goes to the team who are putting the best. I saw my colleague Brad Faxon on Sunday morning in the elevator of the hotel before he went to the golf course. Now, granted, he's got a bit of a dog in the fight. He's the putting coach for Rory McIlroy as well. But he immediately went to the stats that ball striking wise, to the green, the two teams stacked up pretty evenly. That you didn't see a huge advantage, at least on paper. When it came down to putting, I think out of the top 10 putters, out of the 24 who were there, only one of them was an American. So yeah, JT is absolutely right. Maybe some of that setup, this is hindsight talking right now, led to it being such a putting contest. So maybe if Keegan would have gotten that part of it right, it would have been less of a putting contest. But no, I think the captain always gets way too much blame in defeat, just like the coach, and way too much credit in victory.
So leading up to the event, I had several people on to preview, and the one common thread and theme seemed to be, well, one of the reasons that the Americans have the advantage is we have Scotty Scheffler and they do not. Now, I don't want to pile on Scotty because, as I've learned, Tiger, not a great Ryder Cup record. When Phil was peak Phil, not a great Ryder Cup record. Is it just fair to say that the data indicates that we're not as good as they are at the team format, yet when it comes to the individuals, obviously, as we saw on Sunday, we seem to shine? Like, I guess it's a long way of me asking you, why are our best players, both currently and historically, not successful in the team format style?
And I think that's statistically quantifiable. Coming into these matches, the United States have been outscored in alternate shot. That's the one they struggle at, by 6 points by Europe. Conversely, and this is over the last 20 years, conversely, they had outscored the European side by 6 points in 4-ball. 4-ball is essentially you and I playing like a best ball situation. So it puts these players back in something they're comfortable with, even though you have a partner. I think specific when it comes to Scotty Scheffler, and I think Tiger Woods can apply to this as well. They are such momentum players that you don't really notice it in real time, but when Tiger Woods in his prime would make a 5-footer for par, that would simply spur him on to make the 12-footer for birdie on the next hole, on and on and on. And alternate shot, you're only hitting half the shots, and it's really hard to get any kind of momentum. I'm not making excuses. Certainly the Europeans have figured out a way to do it, but I think there's something to be said for that. And also, when it comes to both Tiger and Scotty, these are guys that didn't particularly want to go playing the American Express, the old Bob Hope. They didn't think 30 under for the week was really suited their game. Making a ton of birdies was not something they were interested in. They were going to grind you down. When par was a good score, Scotty Scheffler is at his best. So was Tiger Woods. That wasn't the golf course we had last week.
All right, so let's move over to the other side. As you've referenced a couple of different times, we can crack on the Americans all we want, but this is like one of those games in any sport where the opponent is just better even when you bring your best. So you kind of just tip your cap to the Europeans and Luke Donald. Admittedly, Rex, I kind of roll my eyes at things like changing shampoo and changing bedding. But look, devil in the details. Brandel Chambly himself pointed this out post-mortem when the Golf Channel was doing their Live of the Ryder Cup. He dropped this quote about the shine on the captain's boots, and essentially that's a testament to the detail-orientated approach of the Europeans. Paul McGinley on the broadcast, I think the over-under was 1,000,000 times when he talked about their process. So what is it about, what is it about Luke Donald and the European side that allowed them to kind of prepare the way they prepared to, again, simply just outplay the Americans even when the Americans were at their best?
I think that was a brilliant part of Sunday's press conference for the Europeans when Luke was kind of pointing out, you mentioned that shampoo. By the way, I looked that up online. That was $98 bottle of shampoo.
Oh, wow.
I can't afford it. That's out of my price range, but I'm sure it's absolutely lovely to shampoo with $98 worth of shampoo. I think Rory said it best when Luke was sort of pointing to these little things. And Rory rolled his eyes almost a little bit. Well, come on, it's more than that. He knows it's more than that. I'll go back to, we are still learning. Up until recently, up until just a few weeks ago in Napa at the tour event, I was learning about things that Luke Donald had done in Rome. He had sewn each country's flag inside each sweater for the players. So John Rahm, it was Spain. No one in the world could see it. It was all on the inside. But it's just those little things. And his theme for last week was, this has been done 4 times before. That means the Europeans had come to the United States and won this 4 times before. Before he made this narrative, those Europeans probably thought, this can't be done. It's only been done once in the last generation, and we call that the miracle at Medina. So he got the team to believe that, yes, we can do this. It's been done 4 times before. Sure, absolutely. We're just as good as any of those guys. It's just the little thing. I truly believe a good captain can make half a point difference, maybe a point in the final outcome of things. And if that's what Luke did in this instance, and you get an idea how much better the Europeans are, but I certainly think he is one of the best ever.
So when it comes to lessons learned, let's move into this space. I've heard, I think it was Brandel who said, Fred Couples. I think Brandel dropped the name Freddie Couples. I've heard of Justin Leonard. We had a golf guest yesterday with an out-of-the-box idea with Theo Epstein, who has been named to the committee, the Future Competition Committee. I was able to interview Brian Rolapp when he was with the NFL. I have reached out several times since he took the CEO job. No surprise, haven't heard back. Maybe at some point we can interview him again. But from your vantage point, outlining what we just did and unpacking what the Europeans have done, what can we learn from their approach, and what's next as we're in Ireland in a couple of years, and who do you think the captain should be and why?
Well, that's the key. Who is the United States Luke Donald? Like, you have to find that person. At the front of the line is going to be Tiger Woods. Actually, Tiger Woods should have been, historically, it was a lock that he was going to be the captain last week at Bethpage. Based on his history, he won a U.S. Open there. It's the People's Country Club, all of the things, but he decided that he couldn't focus on it. As you pointed out, Brian Rolapp, the PGA Tour is going through a lot of stuff right now, and Tiger Woods is right at the center of that. And I think in Tiger's mind, we know enough about him, he is obsessive-compulsive. And when he fixates on something, he hyper-focuses. But that means he probably doesn't have a lot of bandwidth to focus on something else. Next time around, I truly believe it could be very different. It seems to me Brian Rolapp, as you pointed out, he's got the PGA Tour heading in a direction, his direction. So it seems to me Tiger Woods' responsibilities are easing there. And in 2 years, it's in Ireland. It's at Adair Manor, which is their version of Augusta National, and I will attest it is an unbelievable place. It's going to be an incredible Ryder Cup venue. It's owned by an Irish billionaire named J.P. McManus, who's pretty much best friends with Tiger. So I think the conversation starts and stops with Tiger Woods. Now, if he decides not to do it again, then we start having longer and broader conversations. I get what they're saying about maybe a Theo Epstein to step in and do it. I don't know if I particularly agree with that. I think what you have to do is look at what the Europeans do so well. They create continuity between each captain. Now you've had back-to-back captains. I'll be surprised if he doesn't do it a third time. And that captain, the incoming captain, takes everything that they've learned over a collective 20 or 30 years and applies it and puts his own twist on it. The United States needs to find some way to get in that sort of form.
So I have a piece that is on the Golf Channel website that names Keegan as the favorite to run it back. Any chance that Keegan Bradley is the captain again at Adair Manor in 2 years?
I did not write that on.
No, you did not.
golfchannel.com. I don't know if I would have written that because, no, I don't think that's really a possibility. Not because he's not qualified, not because I don't think he would be a good captain. I just think in the modern era, it's going to be tough. If you're not a Tiger Woods, and certainly Phil Mickelson would have been in the mix had it not been for him leaving for Live Golf, I don't know that you'll see a back-to-back American captain again.
Okay, fair enough. All right, now let's move over to the topic that everybody was talking about. And I am a child of the Northeast, and I grew up going to Knick games and Yankee games and Jet games and Giants games. And so I have certainly seen porous behavior from fans in other venues, and it's not just a New York thing. It's a sports fan thing. We're out here in Salt Lake City with a rabid college football fan base, and whether it's Utah or BYU, there's a portion of their fans that seem to ruin the game for everybody. I have a tough time with this, Rex, because when it comes to the role of a heel, if you're going to egg people on, you're going to have to expect something. Now, I'm not excusing throwing drinks. I'm not excusing personal attacks. I'm not excusing some of the behavior that seemed to be prevalent at Bethpage. And I listened to your interview today with the CEO of the PGA of America, I believe, and you did a great job of asking him these questions that I'll ask you. So your thoughts on some of the behavior we saw, namely directed towards Rory McIlroy and his role as the heel that he's been playing for a couple of years, and how do we avoid this moving forward? Let's unpack this topic, Rex.
I think when it comes specifically to Rory McIlroy, and I wrote this on Monday morning because I actually reached out to the president of the PGA America when they negotiated the deal to bring the Ryder Cup to Bethpage. That was back in 2013 because I wanted to get an idea what the thought process was at that time. And I started the story saying that the behavior of some in the crowd, obviously not all, towards specifically Rory McIlroy, his wife, as you pointed out, is unacceptable. Not at a Ryder Cup, not at a sporting event. It's unacceptable just in general society. Let's don't treat other people that way. Even in a sporting event, that's not acceptable. Full stop, if you start from there. All of that being said is when they decided in 2013 to go to Bethpage, it was for the crowd. It was for that atmosphere. You grew up in the Northeast. You're well aware of what to expect. I think everyone who saw that announcement in 2013 thought to themselves, wow, that's going to be a crowd. Like that's going to be different, unlike anything we've ever seen in golf. And Rory, you're right, didn't do himself any favors. I mean, if you're going to be the antagonist, the New York crowds are going to give it back to you. I'm not justifying anything, what anybody did, but certainly he sort of embraced that role of being the bad guy on the European side. All that being said, you can make sure that never happens again, and the easy answer to that is never go back to Bethpage. And as you heard in that interview, the PGA has 2 championships heading back there. So even with everything that went on, and even with all the hand-wringing right now because of fan behavior, they still understand that if you want to elevate the Ryder Cup or any of their other events to something close to the mainstream sports, you're going to have to do it in a situation like that, in a big market with the crowd the way they are. Every 2 years we seem to have this conversation because no one likes something that happened at the Ryder Cup. And my argument is if you want to be mainstream sports, sometimes that's what it looks like. It's kind of ugly sometimes.
Yeah, well said. All right, before I set you loose, I wanted to kick the tires with this. As a reference, I was traveling last week, but did everything I could to consume every portion of this compelling television show. And on my way back on the plane, it was great timing. I was able to watch the majority of the Sunday singles. So Cam Young makes his putt. JT makes his. Bryson battles back. Scotty takes care of Rory. Obviously, Cantlay lost his match. Ludwig was the only European to win a point, which is still wild. Xander takes care of John Rahm, and you start to go, okay, JJ beats Sepp Straka. If I'm Russell Henley, I'm thinking about that lag putt on 18 for the rest of my life, certainly. But was there ever a moment, Rex, that you thought, okay, all right, there's a shot that this thing is actually going to turn around in what would have been an extremely historic comeback on Sunday?
Yes, I actually wrote it in my notebook. It was at 4:37 p.m. because I was sitting behind the 17th green, and it was the atmosphere everyone wanted. It was just electric, and 30,000 people all sort of focused into this little 3-hole loop that sort of makes up the last few holes at Bethpage Black, and everything was going nuts. And as you pointed out, there was just one European flag on the board, And if the United States could find a way to flip those last two matches, which were tied at the time, there was a clear path to victory that I don't think anyone anticipated. It had never been done before, a comeback from 7 points. The threshold there is 5 points. So it was impossible to sort of wrap your mind around it could possibly happen. I will say I walked away from Sunday thinking to myself, it just kind of proved that what we thought we knew on Saturday night about Luke Donald was true. He's a brilliant tactician, wonderful coach, great captain. And what we thought we knew about Keegan Bradley was probably true, that he was probably outclassed because through 2 days of team play, the American team was 7 points worse than that European team. You can't tell me that those Americans are 7 points worse, and they proved it on Sunday, that you put them in an atmosphere that they're comfortable, which is singles play, they're going to put up a fight. And I think we see it time and time again where the United States digs a hole in the team format and then finds a way to claw back. It just depends on how big of a hole they dig for themselves. And this time it was just slightly too big.
I lied to you, Rex. I've got to kick the tires with one more thing. I suppose the only thing more antiquated than an envelope would be like a telegram. I did not know this was a rule. And it just seems to be a little bit antiquated and unfair. And I suppose it depends on what side you're on. But Victor Hovland pulls out due to injury, and both sides are awarded a half a point. That just seems weird to me. Do you think we're going to see this change moving forward?
Certainly, if you listen to Keegan on Sunday night when he was asked about it in his press conference, I was a little disappointed because he said he's got some ideas on how to fix it, but he wouldn't give away any of those plans. I was a little disappointed because I can't wrap my mind how you make it work. So on Solheim Cup, which is the LPGA's version of the Ryder Cup, they have a situation where if there's a similar injury, that a full point goes to the team that doesn't have the injured player. I'm not quite sure how comfortable I would have felt with about that. On Sunday, and Victor Hovland, clearly he was injured, couldn't go. I think you could probably have a conversation about maybe you get an alternate, although I wouldn't have a clue how that would work out. I will agree with you that not only is it antiquated, who has envelopes anymore? I mean, I told my son about that. He doesn't even know what an envelope is.
Yeah, that caught me as odd. Well, look, thank you for being a North Star through this entire thing. You guys killed it on the podcast. I listened to all of them. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully we can figure something out to get this thing back on American soil. Thank you, Rex.
Appreciate it.
All right, Rex Hoggard, Golf Channel. You can get him on Twitter at Rex Hoggard GC. He writes a bunch for the website. And then he's the co-host of the Golf Channel podcast. It's an excellent podcast if you're looking to learn a little bit more about how the Ryder Cup works and what could come next for the United States. A lot of options out there. A lot of people on the Tiger Woods bandwagon to become the captain before we go to Ireland in a couple of years at Adair Manor. But the Americans fight back on Sunday. Ultimately, not enough, and the Europeans take the Ryder Cup home to Florida, where most of them live, which is really weird. With IFA Step 4 Fall and Winter Lawn Food, you'll get stronger roots now. And an early green up next spring, it's the ultimate lawn owner power move. More at your local IFA or at ifa.coop. All right, 1 hour in the books on this Wednesday. We're going to bring in Sarah Todd to do a little jazz on this Wednesday afternoon. She was at Jazz Media Day. We'll preview BYU West Virginia with Jason Shepard. We'll do a deep dive on the Utes in the 4 o'clock hour with Chris Camerani. Then we'll move into the 5 o'clock hour of the program before we say goodnight at 6 on a jam-packed Wednesday edition of The Drive. And it's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700. Going to preview BYU and West Virginia coming up with Jason Shepard, our friend from BYU TV, former producer of the Bill and Spence Show. For you old school Utah Sports Talk Radio listeners, Chris Camarati is live in studio. We'll do a deep dive on the Utes during their bye week and talk some big picture Big 12. But believe it or not, basketball season is here. Media day for the Jazz on Monday, 5 hours of sound. Training camp is going on both here in Salt Lake and across the landscape of the National Basketball Association, which means it's time for the first of many hits this season with our friend Sarah Todd from the Deseret News. Hello, Sarah. Happy Wednesday. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Just kind of trying to get back into it. Had a couple of early days, and I'm so excited that basketball is around the corner. There's a part of the summer. I think at the beginning of the off season, I'm like, oh, good, I need a break, and I enjoy it. And then, like, kind of as August starts to roll around, I'm like, start to get antsy, and I'm ready for it to start again.
No, I'm with you. Hey, Porter, real quick, will you check our mail slot? The mail comes to the station for our show and me specifically to see if the wedding invite for Sarah and Colin's wedding came. Will you check? Because it didn't come to my house, and I know she sent it. So would you please check the station inbox, please?
Yeah, it's not there. Just IRS.
Sarah, it's not there. Did it get lost in the mail, or what's the deal here?
That's so crazy. I was totally wondering why I didn't get an RSVP from you. It must have gotten lost.
Oh, okay. Well, my feelings are hurt, but I do have to start with the congratulations to the two of you, okay?
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're really, really happy, and it was really great.
Good stuff. Well, you invited Andy and not me, so my feelings are hurt. Anyway, we can move on.
That felt obligatory.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, Sarah, the question you asked Walker is the soundbite that's getting the most attention, and certainly we played that on our show. And I've got to say, look, I can understand both sides of this. If I'm the Jazz, I understand why this makes sense to maintain financial flexibility. And if I'm Walker, I'm looking at the 3 years that I've put out there and expecting to be taken care of. So give us your thoughts on where we stand with the Jazz and Walker Kessler, and do you think this is anything that will become an issue as we move forward?
Yeah, I'm with you that I see both sides, right? Like, I understand the Jazz, especially financially, not wanting to have, like, that cap hold before they, like, fully were to make a decision on a long-term deal once the 2026 offseason comes around, and, you know, wanting to have financial flexibility going into the offseason. That being said, like, you know, I'm sure that from the outside looking in, like, how much financial flexibility and cap space do you really need when you're a team that can never really lure free agents, right? You're going to have to do it a different way anyways. And then, you know, also from the Jazz's perspective, like, let's see how it goes this season, and, like, we'll pay, you know, what you're worth at the end of the season. But from Walker's perspective, like, yeah, I'm sure. It's like, I've been here 3 years. I've been one of the lone bright spots on the roster as you've tanked into oblivion. And, you know, not for nothing, like, we were able to see kind of what Walker might look like in the, you know, they had the few flashes when he was playing with a point guard at the level of Mike Conley, you know, early in his rookie season. And then since then, it's not like he's really had someone to compliment him in a way that he would be complimented if this were a team that was really playing for contention. And so it's kind of unfair to maybe value him based on kind of who his teammates are and the production that they have been able to put around him. And so, yeah, I think that it's understandable for him to be frustrated. It's understandable for the Jazz to be holding out. And I just am hoping, yeah, like, is this something that could affect the season for Walker? Yeah, and, like, we've seen that Walker, like, you know, wears his emotions on his sleeve, and it's not really easy for him to, you know, keep everything separated. And so I'm really hoping that he's able to separate kind of his feelings and frustrations towards the front office or ownership and their decisions, and keep those separate from, you know, his day-to-day life with, you know, the coaching staff and his teammates, because those are separate. But I can't imagine how difficult that is as an athlete, right? Like, that there's a lot of reasons that I don't envy that position. But I think it's something to keep an eye on. And also something to keep an eye on, like, if we see that the team maybe wins a little bit too much at some point and does start to maybe sit guys or manipulate minutes, or, as they have the last couple of years, like that's another thing that could be frustrating. And I think that kind of a part of this equation that maybe is not talked about so often is you have to think about like the way that Walker might be looking at his future, and not just like in financial terms, but like in terms of what winning could look like. 'Cause let's say that like Ace Bailey looks great, Taylor Hendricks has a great season, that they are still trying to lose this season. So it's not like they're going to be winning anything. They want a high draft pick, and then whatever high draft pick they get, you're going to want time for them to incorporate into the roster and develop them. Like, we're not talking about a team that next season is going to be ready for the playoffs. They might just be ready to start trying a little bit. So then you get into the 2027 offseason. That's probably when they are going to hope to bring in some higher tier level players. But even then, you don't just bring in players and have roster turnover and everything makes sense immediately. So if you're looking at a timeline of like when this team might actually be really successful and have a possibility for playoff success, we're talking about like the 2028-29 season maybe. And then at that point, Walker Kessler is 28 years old. And so it's not only like, is he being taken care of financially, but like, is he being taken care of in the way that like, could he be winning before his prime peaks?
So let's stay in this space for a moment. There are those that believe, and I don't know that I put myself in this group. My whole takeaway was simply Gordon Hayward wanted to go play for his college coach, and he wanted to play in a bigger city. I believe that to be true, and that's kind of my take on it. There are those that believe when Dennis Lindsey decided to not extend Gordon as a rookie and said to him, go bet on yourself, that put the wheels in motion for Gordon to leave as soon as he possibly could. Now, we need to be clear here. If Walker has a really good year and the Jazz say, go find a deal, and he does, the Jazz can still match it, okay? So it doesn't mean Walker is leaving at the end of the season. So if Walker does what Gordon did and has a really good season, gets a max offer from whoever, okay, we'll just say the Lakers because everyone knows the Lakers want him. The Jazz can match the deal, and Walker is back here for another probably 4 years, okay? So there's that. The Jazz aren't losing Walker Kessler this offseason as a result of not extending him. But there is the risk that after that contract is up and he is an unrestricted free agent, he could decide to leave. Do you think there's anything there as far as the risk the Jazz may be taking if that narrative is true at all?
I mean, I think there's absolutely risk. I think that, if you're looking at, if there are spurned parties involved, and if there's feelings of like this is not like a long-term place that is going to satisfy me basketball wise, that like when you head into unrestricted free agency and you kind of allow the rest of the league to dictate the value, not only is there risk of you not making the player feel valued and making them feel like, okay, well, like I'll go somewhere else when this is over. But there's also a risk that maybe someone is willing to pay a higher number than you are, right? And so it's not automatically. I don't assume automatically that like, oh, the Jazz are just going to match anything. Like, so there's absolutely risk involved. And I think all of that being said, I think that Walker loves it here. Like, he really loves this fan base, and I don't think that he's had any problems living in Utah, playing in Utah. Like, this has really become home for him, and I know that like his team and his family, they love it, and so I don't think that any of that kind of goes into the equation. And so like there is a way for the Jazz, to kind of make this right in Walker's mind, but that does not mean that there's not risk.
Is there anything to the potential, and I'm honestly kind of laughing at myself for asking this question, but we have to explore all possibilities because we simply don't know. And the reason I'm kind of chuckling at myself before I ask this is Walker is 24 years old, and he's really good. But is there anything about this dynamic to indicate that maybe he's not part of their future plans as Austin Ainge has taken over and stripped this thing down to the studs, and maybe they're looking at their timeline starting with like Ace at 19, and maybe they look at Walker as like, no, like by the time we think we could be good, which if we're honest, Sarah, could be 5 years away at the landscape of the Western Conference. Do you think there's any mindset in the front office that maybe they don't view Walker as a future piece of this program, which seems wild to me if that's their calculus at this point?
No, I mean, I don't think it's like kind of like a straight up, nope, we don't see this as a part of our future, because I do think that they're really hoping. I think the Jazz are really hoping that Lowry and Walker both fit the timeline. I think that they are really thinking that, and whether or not that's, wishful thinking or if it's realistic, like, we really don't know right now. But I think they really are in the camp of like hoping that works out. But that being said, like, that might not be realistic, right? Like, you get 3-4 years down the road, like, we might actually see that you're right, that 5 years might actually be a more realistic timeline for this team. And so I don't think that they've kind of written it off already. I don't think that's a calculus in this decision. But it is definitely worth keeping in mind, like, who is going to fit the timeline.
Last thing on this, ironically enough, the Jazz and Walker Kessler have a deadline of October 20th. Like, we're talking about this as if it's a done deal, and maybe it is. Maybe they just decided, like, we're not doing this. But we're still nearly 3 weeks away from the deadline. Do you think there are any conversations taking place between the two sides, or does it feel like, based off of the way he answered your question, they've kind of told him, like, no, dude, you're playing out this season, and we're not going to extend you?
I mean, based on how he answered the question, I mean, like, if I think he'd answer the question differently if he thought that there was actually any light at the end of the October 20 tunnel, right? But additionally, I've talked to people close to the situation, and it is fully my understanding that the Jazz are not going to be extending him before the end of the season, or before the end of the deadline, October 20 deadline.
Got it. All right. The other deadline that we are watching here is on October 31st is their last day to exercise options on Collier, on Cody, on Taylor, on Keontae, and Bryce. I feel like this is probably a waste of air. They're going to exercise all those options probably, yeah?
Yeah, and I think, the important thing to remember on those rookie scale team options are that those are not for this season. Those are for next season. And so the October 31st, 2025 deadline, they have to make the decision about the 26-27 season by then. And so it is a little bit of, looking ahead and being like, are we actually going to spend this money on these players for next year? And they have to make that decision without seeing how this season plays out. And so there is I'd say a tiny bit of decision making that has to go into that. That being said, you exercise those team options because they're, relatively in the NBA world, those are cheap contracts. And so you can get one more year, a look at them without having to pay kind of an inflated salary. And so I'd be surprised a little bit if they didn't exercise all of those team options. But yeah, they do have to make those decisions by Halloween.
So you may have already kind of answered this question, but let's dig into it a little bit more, because Andy asked Austin a question about Lauri Markkanen, and I listened to Zach's pod as well. So Zach Lowe, for our listeners that may not have heard it, said on his podcast something along the lines of he would be stunned if Lauri Markkanen is with the Jazz at the end of this season. 28 years old, which again is not old, but it is kind of at the end of your quote-unquote prime. And I wonder how Lauri, who himself looked around and said they're all children, basically, views his current lot with this team. He's a max player, so he doesn't have to worry about money. Neither do his grandkids, so he's locked that in. But players want to win. They know the deal with their legacy. What do you make of this dynamic? You alluded to earlier the Jazz, whether it's realistic or not, would like to have Lauri around when they're actually serious about competing, but I just don't think that's realistic. That's just my opinion. Do you think we are headed for a Lauri Markkanen trade either, this season prior to the deadline or maybe next offseason? What's your take on this dynamic?
I think my general view of the Lauri thing is that, I used to have the view that there are certain guys on certain teams that are untouchable, and then Luka Doncic totally changed my mind on that, I guess. But, I don't think that Lauri is somebody that's completely untouchable. I do think that if an offer came in that, the Jazz were like, we really can't say no to this, then they would absolutely take it. But that being said, I do tend to believe them that they want Lauri around. I think one of the reasons that I do is Lauri is so well liked and respected by the stars in the league. And the Jazz have like almost no hope of luring a big time free agent, right? They definitely don't have that hope if they don't have someone like Lowry on the team, right? Like if you trade Lowry now and you're talking about trying to lure someone here to play with 19 or 20-year-old Ace Bailey and 21-year-old Taylor Hendricks, like that is a really hard sell for the elite level players in the league to come to Utah and play with a team that is so young. But a good piece to lure players is to say, hey, we have one of the most versatile players in the league who you all know and respect. Like, do you want to come and play with Lowry? I think that has to be a piece of the equation. That has to be a piece that the Jazz are thinking about, is like, how can we even hope to bring anybody? And even then, it might not be good enough, right? And so I don't think that, they're just blowing smoke when they say, like, we really hope and we want Lowry to be a big part of the future. I think they really mean that, and they really do want it to work out. But I'm like you, that I am pessimistic about whether or not it fits the timeline. From Lowry's point of view, at least, I can say with absolute certainty that, like, Lowry is not someone that's pushing for a trade or is trying to get out. He signed that extension. He signed that deal understanding that this was going to be a long journey for the Jazz. And he signed up knowing that. He knew what it was going to look like in these losing years. And he loves it here, and his family loves it here. And, he's got a very young family, and they like it here. And so for a lot of people who are thinking, like, Lowry must want out because it's horrible in Utah, obviously the winning isn't there and no one wants to be on a losing team. I think that he made that extension knowing that was going to be the case for a few years.
All right, moving over to a piece you wrote about Kevin Love, and I learned a lot about Kevin Love. I honestly had no idea he had any ties to Utah, and I'm going to tell you why. 2 years ago, before Dennis Lindsey landed in Detroit, when he was kind of he was helping out Nico in Dallas. He was kind of an advisor to Nico Harrison in Dallas. He went on a podcast and said that during the height of the Mitchell, Gobert, Quinn, that iteration where they were really rising up the ranks, winning a ton of regular season games, they expedited the growth with Conley, and suddenly it's like, all right, maybe we got something there. Dennis said on the podcast that I listened to, he had a trade in place for what he characterized a all-star caliber player in his prime. And I can share that I know that player was Kevin Love. On the podcast, Dennis said that the player's agent contacted him and said, don't do the deal. He won't show up. Now, that's 5 years ago, okay? Now, Kevin Love is not the player he was 5 years ago. But based off of what you wrote and his ties to the state, I am a little bit surprised that was the player that Dennis said he had thought he had acquired. He said he didn't want to come here based off of Kevin, apparently, based off what you wrote, likes it here and is going to have his family move here. So we're not expecting Kevin Love to play 35 minutes a night and go 20-10 like he used to be. But what do you make of this dynamic? What's a reasonable expectation? What do you think the Jazz are hoping Kevin Love brings to this locker room?
Yeah, I think, that story from that trade that didn't go through, I think there's so many variables. And since you know this from being around the league for so long, that, like, and especially if like Kevin Love's history, like he's said many times and that he might want to retire in Cleveland, and that I think that probably there was the idea that he could stay there or get back to Cleveland, and because he has this affinity and this love for a place like that. And I think that there's so much that has changed in his life over the last 5 years. Getting married, having 2 kids, like those are things that have completely changed his life in the last couple of years. And I think that, if he was the one that kind of nixed that deal, number one, I don't think it was necessarily about the team, it wasn't necessarily about the place, right? Because he clearly has a lot of history here. Like I wrote about, he He had a friend that owned a place in Deer Valley. He considered buying property here. For many years, he came to Utah and would spend more than a month in Utah during the off season, training with the guy who used to be the Cavaliers like sports science coordinator, strength and conditioning coordinator, and that guy, his name is Alex Moore. The reason he has ties to Utah as an Australian native. He used to be the strength and conditioning coordinator for USA ski and snowboarding teams. And so when he got to the Cavs and he had this kind of bond with Alex, and they would come here in the off seasons. I mean, he used to spend time going down to Bryce Canyon and to Torrey and Page, Arizona, and all of these places. And I wrote about it. The ties absolutely run deep, and there's no reason to think that he would have hated coming to Utah. But like you said, once this happened, the decision was like, okay, well, am I going to move my family out there? And then once he talked to Will Hardy and Austin Ainge, and they were like, listen, we think you could have a real impact on these young guys. And Kevin got to thinking about when he was a young player in Minnesota on a young team, and he didn't really have a sage veteran that was kind of taking him under his wing in that situation. And he thought a lot about what it might mean to be that for someone else. And so when Will and Austin were like, no, we're serious about this, then Kevin was like, all right, let's do it. And he said at media day, a lot of people might be asking, what if it doesn't work out? What if you don't like it there? And he's like, yeah, but what if I do? What if it does work out? And what if I do have positive value on this team? And let's do it. What does he have to lose at this point in his career? But like you said, definitely not. It's not going to be 35 minutes a night at Kevin Love. Honestly, if you think back to kind of the Patty Mills role on the Jazz, I would expect something close to that, if not less on the court. I think more so that Kevin is somebody that can be a player that can kind of hold these young guys accountable. And he also garners respect. Kevin Love is going to be a Hall of Fame player. He's an NBA champion. He's seen the league from every angle. And he's got a lot of wisdom to offer these young players. And I think that's the reason that he's here.
I am excited for the first time Will plays him 28 minutes and Taylor plays 10, and the Jazz fans are just up in arms that the young kids aren't, because that's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. Well, and Will is not afraid to send a message.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so I'm really looking forward to that. I in my mind, I'm I can't wait till someone messes up so bad that Kevin Love plays 30 minutes.
For sure. Kyle Anderson, he's sticking around too, right? Kind of similar type role.
Yeah, I think it's similar, but I do think that Kyle might actually play a little bit more than Kevin would. I think that he's kind of more of a player that would be a really good connective piece on the floor while these young guys, right? You can't just put 5 of these young guys out on the court and expect it to look good or expect them to be able to work through mistakes. That's just not how basketball works. You need someone out there to kind of help them on the fly and talk them through things and make good decisions while they're learning. And Kyle seems like kind of one of those players that would be able to do that. So I expect him to play a little bit more. But again, when you're looking at, Yusuf Nurkic, Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson, those 3 players in particular, those guys are not going to be taking up the bulk of the minutes. And I think in Kevin Love's case, far from it. But they are connective, good pieces that I think can help the young players learn.
Kevin Love is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
You have my mind. I'm not saying emphatically no, but I'm going to have to do a deep dive. Bunch of all-star.
He's a 5-time All-Star.
Yep.
He was the NBA's most improved player. I think that he was on an all rookie team. He was on all NBA team.
Gold medal.
NBA champion. He's a gold medalist.
Yeah, you might be right. I had not considered that. You usually are, Sarah. That's why you're the 2-time Sports Writer of the Year. All right, last thing here, Sarah. When Will is in the mood to be instructive, he's so dynamite. I love listening to his post-game pressers, and every time he takes a mic, as long as he's not in a bad mood, it's always informative and educational. And he talked about how every NBA player has a year where they pop, they break out. And for, the greatest players we've had here, we'll give you some context. John Stockton didn't become John Stockton until his fourth year in the league. Now, he was backing up Ricky Green, and he put up some good numbers his first 3 years, but it wasn't until year 4 where he was 15 points, 14 assists, all-star. Carl basically popped year 1-ish, but it was year 2 when he was an all-star, 22 and 10. It's always unfair to compare any of these young players to Hall of Famers. But if there is a player to pop like that this year, who is it in your opinion and why?
I mean, my really, really hopeful mind turns to Taylor Hendricks. I think it's a long shot, right? But, like, I hope so much for him because of just how traumatic and crazy last year was after the injury. And I just think that he has so much potential that has yet to be unlocked. And so, like, the hopeful answer is Taylor Hendricks. I think the more likely answer from the non-rookies is Kyle Filipowski. I think we saw, some little flashes of it during Summer League, and I don't want to kind of overreact to that. But I think that even at the end of last season, it was clear that, Kyle Filipowski has a lot of potential to be a really, really good player in this league. The most obvious answer is Ace Bailey, right? Like the sky is the limit when it comes to potential and talent with him. I think that he might be a little bit raw and it might take a little bit more time than just this year, but those are the three that I kind of turn to.
Sarah, I've decided that if you want to make up for my lack of wedding invite, you can invite me on the honeymoon with you and Colin. I'll just hang out. You won't even see me. I'll just kind of be there, and we'll just kind of. Do you think we have an angle there?
Will you settle for a Halloween party invitation?
Yes. Do I have to dress up?
Absolutely mandatory.
Damn it. Okay, let me think about that, and I'll get back to you. How about that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you, Sarah. The great Sarah Todd, Deseret News. She covers the Utah Jazz. She will be a regular contributor on our program all year long. Media Day on Monday. Training camp opened up yesterday, and we are high speed ahead to pro basketball. We will switch gears. We'll preview BYU West Virginia. BYU in action as Utah and Utah State are on a bye this week. Jason Shepard, the old producer of Bill and Spence, for you old school Utah Sports Talk radio listeners, and now with our friends at BYU TV will join us. Chris Kamrani is live in studio. We'll do a deep dive on Utah's bye week with CK and talk some Big 12 football. Chris, I want to tell you about my friends at IFA Country Stores. With IFA Step 4 fall and winter lawn food, you'll get stronger roots now and an early green up next spring. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move with our good friends at IFA. Our buddy Shep stops by coming up on the other side of a Wednesday edition of The Drive, and it's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700. So we usually save Enter Sandman when your Vatek Hokies are about to play.
This is true.
I have never been to that stadium, but I've got to say, when you hear this song, this intro, and the Hokies come running out of the tunnel, I'm not a fan like you are, but it's one of the coolest opening scenes in all of college football.
Oh, yeah. And, I've been to arenas, stadiums around the country. It is, regardless of how good that team is, or not very good, it's one of the best environments in college football. Even when they're bad, like they are this year, that environment is popping. So kudos to the fans, at least.
But little known fact about our next guest, if I remember correctly, one Jason Shepard has several passions that include Metallica music. Shep, is that correct?
No, that actually is 100% true. In fact, my friend, I went to Denver in June with my oldest son, and we saw Metallica at Mile High.
That is wild. Wait, how old's your oldest son now, dude?
Can you believe this? He's 23 years old.
Stop it. Connor just turned 24, man. We're old men.
Dude, I've got 23, 21, about to be 15, and about to be 13.
Oh, my gosh. I feel like I remember when they were born, man. We are just – where did the years go, bro? We're old men now.
I know. We're seriously old people now. We're the get-off-our-lawn people. But, yeah, seriously, I went and saw – I do love Metallica. And this is – they could not be more opposite. But I still maintain, for me personally, and this will give you a hint into my musical tastes, my two favorite albums of all time are Thriller and Metallica's Black Album. Those two could not be any more different, but I love them both.
Well, and I'm with you. I'm a Michael Jackson fan as well. And the Black Album, it's you know what it is, Shep? Metallica is excellent pump iron at the gym music. Like, it gets you through workouts, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Playing Enter Sandman coming in, the thing that actually sucked about the situation with going to the concert, Metallica was in Denver for 2 days. So basically what they had was one big concert, and then they did part of it. Part of their set was one day, part of the set was the other. It wasn't they were doing the same concert 2 days in a row.
Oh, man.
And so we went on the day where they didn't do Enter Sandman. So I did not get to hear Enter Sandman live. I wanted to hear it so bad, but it was not on the set list for that day.
Natural follow-up, are you still lifting weights and wearing shirts that don't fit you?
I am literally doing both right now. Well, I was at the gym this morning, and I'm wearing a shirt but not because it's a small shirt, so I just fill it out.
Oh, I know you do. Well, good to hear your voice, man. A lot to get to. So here's where I want to start. BYU simply has passed every test that's been posed to them so far this year. The question just has to be, how difficult are those tests, right?
Yeah, I mean, and BYU is 4-0. They should be 4-0. I think when the season schedule came out, you knew they were going to be 2-0. The game at East Carolina was always just a little weird because anytime you travel 2 time zones, it's just strange. You thought BYU would win, but it was just it's just an uncomfortable game. BYU gets that one, and then it's, okay, now you start conference play, but you got to go to Colorado, and this is a team, even though it's completely different than the one that you whooped up on in the bowl game, it's still Colorado. They still get athletes. It's still a hostile environment. It's an energetic place. Can BYU go in and get that win? They go in, they fall down, 14-0, and then completely flip the script and get that victory. I think if all plays out like it should, BYU should absolutely get the win Friday night against West Virginia. Then they have the game in Tucson against Arizona. BYU, if they take care of business as they should be 6-0 as they get ready to host Utah at LaVell Edwards Stadium.
So early on, and I'm interested to get your take on this because we've talked to Linton about this a couple times, and A-Rod, friend of the show, of course, we chat with A-Rod quite a bit, actually. I just felt, Shep, like knowing Aaron the way that I do, I'm not going to say he was tipping his hand about Bear, but he started to become very effusive with praise in a way that he just wasn't with some of the other quarterbacks. Now, part of me thought, okay, is he trying to make Bear feel welcome? We all know that he wanted Bear out of high school. Bear spent spring ball with Stanford. Like, is he trying to kind of make sure the freshman feels good, or did he really like him as much as he did? Well, it turns out that he liked him, and he got the job. So before we get into what he's done, since I haven't talked to you in a little bit, what is your take on just how that dynamic played out and how he won the job, even though he'd only been on the ground for a matter of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable when you think of the fact that not only was he not on the team, he was with Stanford through spring. He was still at Stanford through the month of April. He did not get to BYU until May 3rd. So you're talking about roughly 2 months before the start, 2.5 months roughly before the start of fall camp. But you got to remember, when he got here, Jake Retzloff was still here. None of that had gone down yet. So he was brought in as a backup. The plan was not for him to be the starter when he initially got here. So to go from that scenario where you're not with the team, you're brought in as the backup, to 2.5 months, 3 months later, you're the starter, and you're playing as well as you are, it speaks very highly of not only what Bear has brought to the table in his skill set and his ability to learn an offense that quickly, but it speaks to what you were talking about, and that is the confidence that this coaching staff and specifically, A-Rod has in him. They've loved him for a long, long time. And when it came to fall camp, they got to see him and how he reacted. And, there was still a part of me that even though, I was hoping that maybe that's the way it would go, I'm like, there's just no way they're going to start a freshman, especially with so much on the line and you've got this team. But then the argument that I kept making was whoever was going to be the quarterback, they were getting a really good team around them. And, I said BYU won 11 games last year because they were a really, really good team. It was not because Retzloff was putting up these gigantic numbers. And, and I'm not taking anything away from Jake. He played well, and he was the quarterback. But I'm saying he wasn't the sole reason that the offense played so well and that they were able to win 11 games. You have this defense. You have a ton of weapons around whoever was going to be the quarterback. And so I thought whoever gets this is inheriting a really good team around them. And we're seeing that, but on top of it, you're also seeing the skill set that Bear brings and has sort of the learning curve has been sped up so quickly.
Yeah, I didn't really change my calculation on BYU after the Jake stuff, and I don't feel like most people who paid attention did either. I mean, to your point, Jake made some big-time plays down the stretch, certainly one up here in Salt Lake where he found Chase, and BYU was able to find a way to win. So there were snapshot moments where he was special. But overall, it really was Jay's defense, and at some point, somebody's going to call Jay Hill to be a head coach. You referenced the team around him. LJ's a big-time back, and they've got depth there. There were some questions on the O-line, but I think the O-line's been great. But when Aaron named Bear the starter, my only concern was, okay, do you run the risk of this being a throwaway year for a player like Chase who's trying to put tape out there to make the NFL, or a player like LJ? But what's become clear, Shep, is he didn't, because the other thing I said, all things being equal, just name the kid because you're going to grow with them. But I don't think he named him because he was younger. I think he named him because he was the right choice.
100%. A-Rod named him the starting quarterback because he earned it. He outplayed the other players in Hillstead and Bourget, and this was a guy that added a certain element. Now, Hillstead is also a dual threat guy and can run, but not to the level and with the body type that we're seeing Bear Bachmeier run the football. I mean, everyone wants to talk about being the number 47 and plays like a linebacker and all that stuff. We're also seeing that on the field. It's very difficult to get him to the ground. Now, I think as the season goes on, I don't know if you're going to see as many runs as maybe we saw against Colorado. I think that's just the way that the defense was playing BYU, and so they found something that they could take advantage of. But you certainly don't want to put your quarterback in that type of situation to where he can get hurt, especially knowing how important he's been to the offense so far. But, yeah, this is the guy that won the job. This was not something that was given to him. This was not something that, well, we're going to put him in there and we're going to hope. They believed that he was the right guy. And look, now you're getting him in as a freshman. You started the season well with him. It should continue for a couple of games before you get into the really, really heavy part of the schedule, and then we'll see what happens. But you've given him invaluable reps in games that will pay off not just this year, but as he continues to be the starter in this program. Like, this has started out as good as it could have been in terms of Bear's personal progression as a quarterback, but also the way that he can lead this offense over the next couple of seasons.
And I know we're kind of putting the cart ahead of the horse here, but you do have the Ryder Lyons kid, and every time I see highlights, it's like, oh, okay, well, like that kid is serious. What's like like if Bear continues to do what he's done, he's accounted for 10 touchdowns and he hasn't turned the ball over. The list of BYU quarterbacks to do that is literally zero, including Steve Young, who's on my TV right now talking about Jackson Dart. But what is the contingency in place? Because I feel like with, the money they're paying Ryder and also how good he is, once he lands on campus, he's probably expecting to start, is he not?
I would think anybody in his situation is coming in assuming that you're going to come in and take over the program. In terms of how it all lines up, I'm not 100% sure when he is going to officially go on his mission. I'm not sure when he officially would come back and how that would work into, playing that next season. That stuff is yet to be determined, but I would think that the plan is to go from Bear to Ryder in, however many years it takes for that to happen. I don't know, but I'm assuming by all accounts, that's the plan, that you have Bear for as long as he's going to be here. Whether, he decides, if he continues on this track, who knows? Maybe the NFL comes calling a lot sooner than we thought. But yeah, I think the plan is that Ryder Lyons will be the quarterback once Bear is not. And whether or not that's the first year he comes back, if maybe he wants to come back and learn for a year and then go. And, will all play out in time. I don't have an answer to that one. But, I think the plan is you've got Bears quarterback, and Bears then eventually going to hand things off to Ryder Lyons.
So moving over to Jay's defense, year 3 for Jay Hill, and anybody that knows Jay Hill, he coached up here and he's got ties up here, as do so many coaches with ties to both places, which makes this thing always fun and interesting to talk about. You knew it was only a matter of time before that defense was going to be as stout as it's been, and it's interesting, Shep, because I feel like a lot of national people, a lot of media members, when they talk about BYU, it sounds like the way that they've talked about Utah, where the defense is now getting the benefit of the doubt as it pertains to the way they preview games or talk about the team. And I don't know that there's a school in the Big 12 that has a Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker combo. They're probably the best linebacker duo in this conference. And we can talk about Bear and we can talk about Chase and LJ, but to me, it's this defense that will give BYU a chance pretty much game in and game out. So what are you seeing on that side of the football?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. They have been fantastic. And Jay Hill, getting him on this staff, 3 seasons ago was a game changer. And we have seen, in fact, it was kind of one of the storylines that during fall camp, when we get an opportunity to talk with the players and do interviews and things like that, that was one of the themes that just kept coming up on the defensive side, was that, yes, you've got new players coming in, whether it's transfers or kids out of high school or off missions. So you're always going to have some new element coming in from a personnel standpoint. But everybody on that side of the football felt so good about what was possible because of the continuity. And it was both from a personnel standpoint overall, but continuity on that side of the ball in the coaching staff, from the coordinator down to the position coaches. Everybody knew the scheme. Everybody knew what to expect. There was far less having to learn new things and have to think about it. Everything was so instinctual. They could not wait to showcase what they thought this defense was going to be able to do. And so far, they have been spot on because the defense has been so good. And look, you look at a game like ECU or, the first, quarter of Colorado. ECU got its yards. They didn't get their points. Colorado was able to get some points early by throwing some stuff at BYU that they didn't anticipate. Then Jay Hill goes to work, puts the lab coat on, and makes the adjustments that are necessary, and then they score 1 touchdown over the remaining 3 quarters. So, and I agree with you. The duo of Kelly and Glasker, I'm going out on a limb saying that there isn't a duo as good in the Big 12 Conference as those two. What they have done is remarkable, and those both deserve to be all Big 12, or first-team Big 12 when we get to the end of the year if this continues.
So as I referenced at the start, the bottom line is 4-0. The bottom line is you pass every test thrown at you. Doesn't matter if you cover the spread. You just escape with a win. But when you kind of pan back and understand that BYU has had, in my opinion, superior talent to the teams they played, we're trying to analyze this with Utah and, quite frankly, every team in the Big 12. My big picture question is, I feel the same way about Utah today that I did to start the season. I think they're good. I think Texas Tech bought a ton of talent, and they might be the best team in the conference. But simple question, Shep, with probably a nuanced answer. After 4 games, how good is BYU?
I think they are good, but I think we're all just waiting to see what happens once BYU starts that gauntlet of games that begins with Utah, because you've got Utah, and then you've got at Iowa State, and then you play at Texas Tech. I mean, look, we're talking about the upper echelon of the Big 12 based off of what we've seen so far. Texas Tech, we obviously saw what they did to the University of Utah. Iowa State, to me, Iowa State, Texas Tech right now have proven themselves to be the 2 top teams right now in the Big 12 Conference. And BYU has got to go to both of their venues to play. It starts with Utah, and then you've got this 4-week stretch of just really, really tough games. We're going to know exactly what type of football team BYU is from the middle of October until the middle of November. That's going to tell us exactly how good this team is. We think we know how good they are based off of what they've done so far. I always thought all of the expectations for BYU as soon as Retzloff left, the national perspective and the outside perspective, they all kind of wrote BYU off. And so to me it was always, well, if the quarterback situation can be solidified, the rest of the team is good enough. And I think you then go back to those original expectations of what you thought was possible. Now with what we're seeing out of Bear, we're getting closer to being to the point where maybe those original expectations were true. Now you just have to see if they can be realized. But we're going to know a lot more, like I said, middle of October through the middle of November. That's going to answer that question for us. All
right, Shep. Actually, before we get there, I know you love the NBA. I know you love the Jazz. Give me a hot Jazz take. Give me a hot. What are you looking forward to? Like, Will Hardy addresses the media, talks about. Here's what: if there is a player that will pop, who do you think will pop this year and why?
Well, I think we saw a little bit of it in Summer League. I actually expect a pretty big year out of Kyle Filipowski. I don't think what we saw in Summer League was a fluke. I think this guy is on a natural progression to be a really, really good, pick and pop big. I think Filipowski could have a big year. I am still of the opinion, and I know what Austin Ames said, that we're not gonna manipulate rosters, but you've got enough young players that it probably was not going to matter. I am a little worried with the vets that they've got in, that Will Hardy now is being told you can play whoever you want. I'm a little nervous that we're still going to get more vets, and the chance to get a top 3 to 5 pick may go away. I am still very nervous about that. I am still, for at least one more year, Team Tank, and I'm very concerned that we may be better because I'm just real concerned about it. I don't know how you feel about that, but I am.
If I see Kyle Anderson and Kevin Love getting 30 minutes a night, I'm going to throw up because.
But don't you feel like these guys? The coaching staff is not going to want to anger these vets that are here, especially guys like Kevin Love and whatnot. I just don't know how you don't play them, and that's what worries me, because it should all be about these young players. And then you see what happens. And I hear this, you don't want to throw guys in. Why not? How are they going to learn? In some nights they're going to get their butts kicked. That's fine.
Yeah.
They'll learn and hopefully come back. Let these young guys play. Next year, then you can start the push forward, because the drafts aren't that great. This, by all accounts, is an even better draft this year than last year. Do not mess this up and not get a top 5 pick.
No, I agree. Yeah. In fact, give me a top 3. It appears that there are 3 players coming out of the draft this year that will change things immediately, and one of them is playing in your backyard. And I don't know that BYU fans fully understand who AJ is. There are very few prospects, Shep, that I've ever analyzed that fit and check all the boxes the way AJ does. And then, of course, Richie comes back. They grab the Rob Wright kid from Baylor. I mean, this is on paper the most talented college basketball team that maybe we've ever had here, and maybe we've had here since Majerus had 3 or 4 pros. And I don't know that we've ever seen a prospect like AJ. So I know it's football season, but I'm a basketball guy. When they were able to grab Kevin, I knew he was going to be able to get this thing ticking. I thought it would take longer than it did. They've got proof of concept with Yegor now in the NBA. So what's the buzz down there about this basketball team, and what are you expecting this year from Kevin and BYU men's hoops?
Oh, my goodness. Look, the buzz, there has never been a season more anticipated for BYU basketball than this one. And even with saying that, I'm still not sure if we all realize the type of basketball and the level of talent that we're about to see game in and game out from BYU. It is unprecedented. I'm over at the basketball annex quite a bit because I call the women's basketball games. So I'm over there watching practice, and then I get to see all the men's players. I've had a chance to talk with AJ. I had him as a guest on my podcast, and super nice guy. And I think that alone should make BYU fans happy. But then you throw in the fact that, oh, by the way, this is a once-in-a-generation talent that chose to come to BYU. I mean, I'll tell you, speaking of Jazz Media Day, the comments from Keontae George, who I guess had brought Walt and some other guys, I don't know, but was here at the BYU practice, and he was talking about seeing AJ dunk.
Yep.
And look, it's one thing for fans or us in the media to sort of get excited and anticipate what we're about to see. But when you have other NBA guys that are like, yeah, that was special, that should let us know what type of player this could potentially be. So all of that stuff is to say that I cannot wait for basketball. This team should make a long run. I think they can be a legitimate Final Four team. I cannot wait for this basketball season. It is going to be something like we have never seen before.
Jason, I'm pointing to the sky as I set you loose. I appreciate your time, young man. All the best, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good. Blessings and fingers pointing above as well.
Indeed. Our guy, Jason Shepard, former producer of Bill and Spence for you old school sports talk radio listeners here in Utah. Now with our good friends at BYU TV. BYU welcomes in West Virginia coming up this weekend with Utah and Utah State on a bye. Wanted to preview that. The line has moved a couple of times towards West Virginia. I don't think it is germane to the outcome. BYU opened up as a 20.5-point favorite. As we sit here today, they're an 18.5-point favorite to win on Friday night at 8:30 on ESPN as BYU battles West Virginia, the team that Utah handled a week ago. All right, before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Game Day Men's Health. So I was over there today, and they were taking my blood because this is part of the process. They follow up. It's not just a one-time thing where they give you some products and send you on your way. When you become a member, they actually take care of you month to month to make sure that your blood levels are good. So I'll tell you about the products I utilize. I'll tell you about the products they have, and then I would really encourage you to check out their services because it has made a world of difference. First of all, you should know that at the age of 47, I'm in the best shape I've been in probably since I was 22 years old. Okay, so a couple of years ago, decided I'm going to get in the best shape I possibly can. And what happened is I started working out hard. I started dieting, cleaned up my diet, cleaned up some habits. And after 3 to 4 months, I wasn't seeing a lot of progress because I'm old. That's just how it goes. And then I had a couple of friends ask me, have you ever tried testosterone therapy, which I had never tried. Also, peptides. They've got the weight loss stuff, semaglutide, tirzepatide. They've got a bunch of different products, but I've utilized testosterone therapy and peptides specifically. And when I started utilizing the products at Game Day Men's Health, within weeks, I made more progress than I had prior to in like 3 to 4 months, okay? They're really nice people. It is a great facility. They got a bunch of facilities across the Wasatch Front. Wherever you live, there's one close to you. So they're offering you a free consultation. What does that mean? It means you go in, you take 15 minutes out of your day, they're going to draw some blood, and then my guy Jonathan and his staff, they're going to go over the results. They'll look at your testosterone level, they'll look at some other levels, and they'll introduce you to products that can actually up your energy, up your libido, help your workouts, and get results that you'll see quickly. I can promise you, because they did it for me. Like if you're working out a lot and you're not seeing results, or if you find yourself with lack of motivation to work out, if your libido's low, this stuff will help out right away. So there are products that once upon a time were basically for high-level athletes or rich people, celebrities, actors, whatever. But now those products are available to you at an unbelievable discount at Game Day Men's Health. Bottom line, I'm just telling you, if you want to get back in shape, you need to utilize their products because it will expedite your process as you age, okay? So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Mention you heard me talking about it on the show. You get the free consultation where they're going to show you where you're at. And then, this is the best part, you get 50% off your first-year membership. It makes it extremely affordable. They're going to tell you about testosterone. They're going to tell you about peptides. They're going to tell you about semaglutide, tirzepatide, the weight loss stuff. And they're going to go over this process with you. And again, the great thing about this is they follow up. I go in every month, go in every 3 months to get a comprehensive blood test, and then they show me my levels. My levels are great now, but it took some time, and it is a process. But take advantage of this offer from Game Day Men's Health, where you get a free consultation and then 50% off your first-year membership at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Our guy, the legend himself, fire up the YouTube channel. My guess is he's wearing sunglasses inside. Chris Kamrani is our guest in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll say goodnight at 6 on a busy Wednesday edition of The Drive, and it's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're moments away from first pitch in the Bronx, where both Yankee fans and Red Sox fans have one thing in common, and that is uttering the phrase Aaron bleeping Boone. So, Yankees down 1-0 as a result of the Red Sox win yesterday after the Yankees packed the bases bottom of the ninth, and Giancarlo Stanton could not get a bat on a ball. Our resident San Francisco Giant fan, Chris Camerani in studio. Hello, CK. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Do you like fall baseball?
I do like fall baseball.
Did you watch yesterday as the Red Sox won?
I did not.
You did not?
No.
So you're from the Bay Area. Is it as simple as that? Is that why you like the Giants?
Well, yeah, and my mom grew up going to Giants games with her parents at Candlestick, and then mom and dad took me to Giants games at Candlestick. Easy peasy.
Do they still play there? There was a new stadium. Is it Petco? Is that what they call it?
No, Petco's in San Diego.
That's right.
Now it's called Oracle Park.
I should have. I was in San Diego at Petco months ago. I should have known that.
Yeah.
Have you been to the new ballpark?
Oh yeah, and I've been to Petco Park as well.
Very
Both
nice.
Great parks. In my opinion, in my biased opinion, San Francisco has the best park in the league.
Really?
Yeah.
How many ballparks have you been to?
10. Yeah.
Have you been to New Yankee Stadium?
Have not.
It's like a mall.
Yeah.
I miss the old Yankee Stadium. Like, old Yankee Stadium, the concession options were like hot dog and popcorn. You get pizza.
Mm-hmm.
You go to New Yankee Stadium, it's like sushi, steak sandwiches, and there are literal stores. It's like a shopping mall. I can't stand it.
It's almost like sports have sold their soul.
You think so?
And curtailed the experience for people who can afford the loge.
Well, I guess it's not just a Yankee thing. And breaking news today, the Big 12 is bringing in private equity. According to Pete Thamel. I've been talking about this for years, as you know. Private equity is making its way into everything, and it was just a matter of time after pro sports kind of lifted the Iron Curtain and allowed private equity to kind of permeate throughout the course of the NBA and the NFL. When college moved to this model where you actually have to pay employees, breaking news, it was a matter of time until these sharks kind of got their hooks into things, and now the Big 12 is going to be the first.
Big 10.
Oh, wait a second.
Yep.
Did I misread that?
You did.
Stupid Twitter. Big 10 in discussions about private capital deal, $2 billion into the league and its schools. This is Thamel and Dan Wetzel. 10-year extension of the league's grant of rights until 2046. And that is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When you extend it a decade, does it really change anything? Probably not, because the Big 10 and the SEC are going to be the two leagues that kind of consume everything else. But is this the start of this private equity tidal wave?
You would believe so, especially if they're extending the runway to the level that they are. This is probably the Big Ten realizing that this is their only current pathway to try to keep up with the SEC or close the gap, even though those two are 1A and 1B, and everyone else is very far down the line. But yeah, it was inevitable, and a little bit surprised that it was the Big Ten first, but here come the dominoes.
Yeah, and again, because I misread that tweet and thought it was the Big 12, because it is the Big 10 and they extend grant of rights for a decade, it just furthers the inevitability that the Big 10 and the SEC are going to essentially consume everybody else. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I don't know if that excludes them from being able to further expand the conference. My guess is that it locks the existing teams in. I don't know. Well, I don't know why any teams currently in the Big Ten would want to leave in the future, but
right.
It would be interesting to see if that changes their calculus on whether or not they're interested in expanding further as the years go along.
Yeah, and when they're allowed to do that and what the exit rights look like for Big 12 and ACC teams, I still think it's inevitable, but when it happens, it's going to be really, really messy because a lot of people are going to lose their jobs from other conferences because I do think the other conferences will go away. And when you threaten people's livelihoods, they lawyer up, and there will be exit fees. And, you know, I think the Pac-12 is an example of really the collateral damage that we'll be looking at because I can envision a scenario where the SEC and the Big Ten poach their favorite products from the ACC and the Big 12, and then the Big 12 is scrambling with leftovers, and then they absorb these schools here. I don't know how it's going to play out, but the Pac-12 model seems to be something that could be analogous here.
Well, those who do not learn from history are doomed to see it repeat itself.
Indeed.
Like, I mean, we went through this cycle a few years ago, and would not surprise me in the least if we get there very soon.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. All right. You and I have not spoken, at least publicly into microphones, since Texas Tech rolled into town and took care of Utah. After a very competitive game over 2.5 quarters, it got loose at the end. There were some injuries. This backup quarterback came in, and everybody's like, who's this kid? And beat Utah in a way that I think a lot of people were a little stunned about as far as taking advantage of mistakes that Utah football doesn't typically make. You kind of called this again, leading up into the game. A lot of people, Utah was favored in Vegas. A lot of people picking the Utes because they were at home. I picked the Utes because they were in Salt Lake. I kept using the term that Texas Tech was in town trying to prove a concept against a team that has proof of concept. Well, Texas Tech proved their concept, didn't they?
They did, and at this point, I wonder if what Utah's proof of concept is, because outside of the sustainability of what Kyle has built at Utah, and I guess that's the model is sustainability and punching above your weight. But it was, to me, kind of this clashing of eras, clashing of styles. Can you piece together a roster on the fly in the current state of college football with the House settlement going into effect and having the luxury of maybe having the deepest pockets in America versus a Utah program that has historically prided itself on player development, finding diamonds in the rough, all the cliches that people know about with Utah football. And I think at the end of the day, and this happens more often than not, the team with the better players across the board usually win. And it might sound silly and it might sound reductive, as you like to say, but I couldn't think of one area on the field that Utah was better than Texas Tech on that day. Now, it goes down to coaching, scheme, game plan, players playing, injuries. I get that, but it might seem kind of like a shallow measuring stick. But the backup quarterback coming in and turning into Patrick Mahomes, wearing the same number that he did at that school once upon a time. I think he wore number 5. Porter might have to fact check me.
I think it was 15.
Was it 15?
I think you're right.
All right. But looking like making these no-look throws.
15
in slow mo. That was like, man, this kid has what it takes. And you look at the types of teams that were recruiting him. Texas Tech has always had good quarterbacks. But my point is that when things should have broken Utah's way, it in fact went the opposite way. And that's because Texas Tech currently has better talent across the board.
And, the other thing that you probably just have to admit is the one area, and I'm not saying that the offensive line for Utah isn't good, but the David Bailey kid, the Romello Height kid, the Texas Tech front caused Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu and the offensive line a lot of issues. Like, even the one area that we all felt super confident in with Utah football didn't shine, to your point, at least on that day. And it's not a knock on Utah's offensive line. It's more of a tip of the cap to this rebuilt defensive front. Because as you and I discussed that week, according to The Athletic, what Cody Campbell, the rich oil tycoon and former offensive lineman under Mike Leach, what he saw when he was watching his alma mater is we are getting beat in the trenches. That's what has to be fixed. Texas Tech, historically speaking, has always had a high-powered, exciting offense with quarterbacks that have gone on to the NFL, like Patrick Mahomes, as you referenced, and record-breaking offenses at times. But where they have certainly even the playing field, if not excelled, is these big boys up front, and that's where I think Utah lost the game.
They lost the game there, and it was Utah's offensive line, Utah's defensive line. Again, anytime you watch a team like Texas Tech, whether they're at home or away, you see guys that are 6'3", 200 pounds on the outside that you're like, oh, that guy's an NFL wide receiver. And I know I've beaten this dead horse probably to a pulp, so my apologies to you and your listeners, but Utah just doesn't have that and hasn't had that for a long time. So it was, yes, Utah's strength that was bloated before the game. The best offensive line Utah's ever had. They got shown up at home in front of a national audience, in front of a sold-out crowd, which I will say, watching on TV looked like it was the fans brought it.
For sure, yeah.
And I've been a little critical of Utah fans in the past for not being in the seats and ready for big games. It looked like it was loud. It looked like
I was there. It was good. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But listen, we're almost halfway through the regular season, and I don't think we as the collective don't know much about this team.
Mm-hmm.
And they're lucky enough to have a bye this week to be able to heal up. It might sound kind of overzealous, but you think you could make an argument that the season might be on the line against ASU.
I don't think that's overzealous. I mean, 2 conference losses doesn't necessarily kill you, but it puts you on life support.
And that would be 2 home conference losses.
And also 2 tiebreakers that you lose to teams you're going to be trying to jockeying with at the end. But look, man, TCU back in the day, Oregon, Fox Big Noon, now Texas Tech. I don't know if there's anything here as a sports radio topic, but it seems like whenever the lights are the brightest in these big-time broadcasts coming to Salt Lake City, for whatever reason, Utah football lays an egg. I wonder what you make of it.
Well, they're day games, too, which is interesting. Like the night, I think Rice Eccles at night has a little more juice.
Yeah,
as the cool kids like to say. And they
is it Aura right now? Isn't that the term, Aura?
They have won big games at home. Thinking of Oregon a few years ago, the USC game.
USC, yeah.
Those are night games where Rice Eccles really brings it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's the wagon coming along with the panelists and making it this big thing or what have you. But yeah, I would guess that Utah wants to avoid the daytime national TV slot for a while.
Yeah, just for whatever reason it hasn't gone well. But the fans were there early. They were in their seats. They were loud. I was there, then watched some of the broadcast. I always like to go back and see kind of how the broadcast goes down. Obviously, our guy Gus Johnson was on the call, Joel Klatt. What sort of, if any, collateral damage is risked when you have an audience like that and you look like that? What does that do for your program? Or not do, I should say.
It's a great question. I mean, you can't overreact one way or the other.
Right.
I kind of caught myself rolling my eyes after Utah's Rose Bowl appearances, and they're saying like this is going to change the complexion.
33 million eyes. Yeah.
I mean, yes and no. Mm-hmm. Basically, I think what might hurt Utah is that they laid an egg at home with a bunch of highly sought after recruits there.
Right.
And if they play on the offensive side of the ball, they might say, "Ooh, that team looks like they're fun to play for." That would be mainly my critique, but. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on game to game, season to season.
Is it as wild to you as it is to me that Utah does not have a home win in conference play in the Big 12? I don't think I fully...
Baylor, that game where Cam got hurt.
Oh.
But was that one of the games that technically
No,
wasn't?
that was a non-conference game.
Oh,
yeah, it was technically not.
Yeah, that was a non-conference game.
That is crazy.
Isn't it? It's weird to just consider that Utah has not won a home game in Big 12 play so far.
Wow, and I mean, their next home game is very tough.
It is.
I don't remember who I think they have Colorado next at home after that. But yeah, that is wild to think about. I mean, that is everything kind of going wrong.
Yeah, the remaining home schedule. I think Colorado's not very good this year, so Utah should handle them. And we'll get to Arizona State in a moment. Cincinnati's kind of an interesting team to look at right now.
Kansas on the
road. They beat Kansas on the road. Their only losses are very close game to Nebraska. So Cincinnati's in Salt Lake, and then K-State, who got a little bit of a get-right win and still is a team that most people kind of give that little benefit of the doubt to based off of their historical pedigree. But we'll get to ASU in a moment. Let me get back to a couple things, though, and we should acknowledge that they did win a game since you and I last spoke against a injury-plagued West Virginia team. But again, here we go being reductive when it comes to Texas Tech now proving their concept so far. And things will change with regulations in place. So maybe it's a day late and a dollar short, but Cody Campbell and Texas Tech took advantage of this window when nobody was paying attention to simply economically infuse their program to bring in talent. Is it as simple as if you do not have the pocketbooks that some of these programs do, you're just not going to be able to keep up because money equates to talent? And to your earlier point, there's no such thing as a great coach who doesn't have great players. It does not exist.
Correct. I think from a Utah perspective, the one thing it has going for it, as along with other teams in the Big 12, is the Big 12 is still going to be conceivably up for grabs every year, unless Texas Tech establishes itself as this annual perennial giant. I don't necessarily seeing that happening.
You don't?
I don't.
Okay.
I could be proven wrong, but it's not like Utah's in the Big 10 or the SEC. So if you're a Utah fan, I think that is a positive, and I just think this conference is going to be up for grabs for years to come. I really do.
Did Bellinger just hit a home run? Somebody hit a home run for the Yanks. 2-0 Yankees, bottom of the first. Giancarlo Stanton is up. He's probably going to strike out. No, he grounded out to short. But the Yankees up 2-0. We move to the top of the second as the wild card best of three continues in the Bronx. Rich Rodriguez, his second stint in West Virginia. I think most college football people believe he's a good coach. I know it hasn't worked out all that well in other stops. The West Virginia, side of this that I've read and heard is this is kind of a throwaway year. They want to bring him back and settle things in. Yeah. They're without their starting quarterback. They're down to their fourth running back. They're without 3 offensive linemen. They were without their starting tight end. Their defense was healthy, but I always push back. Like prior to the UCLA game, people would hop on the show, be like, hey, it's still UCLA. They've got athletes. I'm like, no, they stink. Like they're just not good. Okay. It's a Big Ten team. Well, yeah, great. It's a Big Ten team, but they're not good.
Right.
So clearly West Virginia not up to the task. I suppose if you're Coach Witt and Utah football, you feel good that you handled business on the road the way that you should. Can we take anything away from Utah's win over West Virginia?
You can. The offense looked good against another bad team. Let's see if they can look good against a good team. Devin Dampier looked a lot better, but again, he was playing a defense that wasn't nearly as good as Texas Tech's. His health will be obviously paramount to their success against ASU and for the rest of the year. Beyond that, the injuries, question mark. That secondary is beat up, and they're going up against probably the best quarterback wide receiver tandem in the league.
You think Sam's the best quarterback in the league?
I do. And Jordan Tyson's the best wide receiver
beast,
in the league, and he's probably going to be a first-round pick. So don't know. My guess is, just by looking at that injury, my guess is Nate Ritchie might not play again this season. And then the Jackson Benny kid, who's been a revelation so far, didn't necessarily need to go back and do the locker room thing, but having a bye week is huge for them. So what did I take away from West Virginia? West Virginia's bad. It's a redshirt year for Rich Rod. Devin Dampier looks good against bad teams. Devin Dampier needs to look good against good teams.
Yeah, and that leads me to a conversation about Devin. And to your point, we do need to see Devin Dampier. We need to see Bear Bachmeier. We need to see some of these quarterbacks tested against better teams. You can only play who's in front of you.
Exactly.
And BYU's passed every test, and Utah has passed every test outside of their toughest one in Texas Tech. But you brought this up oftentimes, and the data's the data. The numbers are the numbers. Last year, Devin's passing numbers just weren't great. 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. I know some Ute apologists have done like YouTube breakdowns about this pick wasn't his fault. And okay, whatever. But the numbers are the numbers. Has he at least answered questions about his capability and capacity as a thrower in your mind?
I think for me it's still to be determined because he was good enough to keep New Mexico in games last year, which, New Mexico was a fun offensive team, but they didn't win that many games. Now playing with better players and playing against better players, I think we're going to see – I think the next month is going to tell us a lot. And obviously a lot will be predicated on his health because against Texas Tech he didn't look like – not only was he not as effective running the ball, but he wasn't nearly as effective throwing the ball. He was off his mark. You could just tell that there was something wrong, and then Kyle comes out and mentions that he was hurt. So, ASU, BYU, Colorado, those are 3 pretty good defenses in a row. So it's a huge test for Devin and Jason Beck. But who's he throwing to? Again, like Dallin Bentley's been really good. I mean, he looks like the next good Utah tight end if he can stay healthy.
For sure.
But outside of Ryan Davis, There's just not a lot, and you shouldn't be having to rely on your former walk-on who is your best big play guy. And maybe that is his role. Maybe depending on what the secondary looks like, I mean, you might have to sacrifice Jackson Benny's role on offense, even though he's been your most, in theory, electrifying offensive playmaker because you're so thin on the back end.
It's a good point, and that's actually where I wanted to go next, because I don't think they can use Smith on offense either.
Oh, no.
I don't think they can sacrifice. I don't think they can take the chance of losing Smith Snowden on defense with Nate out and some of the other secondary issues. Kyle just keeps talking about Jackson, though, on offense. I feel like Kyle wants to see Jackson Benny more on offense. We did see Lander play snaps on offense against West Virginia. They just didn't throw to him. Does it feel like maybe it's time to look the other way with this experiment with Smith on offense and maybe just keep the guys on defense that need to be there?
I mean, maybe with Smith you have to get really selective with your offensive packages. He's had a lot of missed tackles the last couple of weeks, which is not really emblematic of who he is. So maybe just the reps and just the wear and tear of playing both ways as often as he has the first month is taking a toll. To your point, Lander played quite a bit, didn't have that many catches. I think tight end's a little different. He's going to be blocking a lot. The Jackson Benny thing's fascinating because you can make an argument that he is simultaneously your most dynamic offensive weapon and your most dynamic defensive weapon on the back end.
Yep.
And the back end that has now had one season-ending injury to one starting safety, and then Nate Ritchie's status is up in the air. How do you afford that push-pull? Because I'm sure Kyle wants to see Jackson on offense because when Jackson's out there, they make plays.
Yeah.
Even though that one, huge pass by Devin to him in the Texas Tech game was called back, it's going to be a tough decision for them to figure out.
Depth's going to be tested. It is every year. Yankees take a 2-0 lead. We're going to the top of the second in the Bronx. We'll keep you up to date on some Major League Baseball wild card playoff action. But coming up next, we'll continue to talk Utah football. We've got a 1-2 punch in the backfield. Arizona State's rolling into town. BYU welcomes in West Virginia in Provo coming up on Friday. Chris Kamrani live in studio. We welcome in Ryan from the Dish Professionals. Hopefully, through 6 weeks of college football and 5 weeks in the NFL, you've had all the games at your disposal. If you are a sports fan and you don't have Dish, I can just tell you you're doing it wrong because I've tried every single platform. Save a bunch of money on internet as well. Save a bunch of money on a lot of things. Bottom line, 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Spence, thanks so much, as always. And, super excited to have these great offers and opportunities for customers. And it just creates happiness for us because we make customers happy. They get to save money. They get to lower their expenditures and also be able to upgrade their whole TV and internet experience because we've done a lot of work on the internet side. And I've put together the contracts where you can just call me. You'll get the same price as you would call each individual one of these internet ISPs. But you can call me and I'll just tell you, hey, all these are available and this one's available and probably the best option for you. We've got fiber, we've got wireless products, we've got pretty much everything out there. And here's the thing is, even if your fiber is working great, but they're overcharging you, call us because there might be another option. You can use the same fiber, just pay a different provider. And that's just that simple. And that's what we do. Especially with cable bundles, guys, listen, don't get trapped in that. And those are the customers that probably save the most is they're stuck with their cable TV and internet, and they can't switch because they'll raise the other one. We'll probably have a fantastic internet option for you, and our TV service is going to be a lot cheaper, like $40, $50, $60, maybe $100 a month cheaper than what you're currently paying. Call us up, get 3 months free of Dish's top package. We'll throw in a 2-year promotion. The price is guaranteed. We'll also throw in the NFL Red Zone multi-sports pack free for 6 months and dinner at JCW's. Call us 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, more with CK live in studio coming up on the other side of a quick break right here on ESPN 700.
Do it, man. I'll be in here.
Chris Camerani live in studio for another big segment before we get to the 5 o'clock hour of the program. The New York Yankees lead the Boston Red Sox 2-0. We move to the top of the third. Red Sox have a runner on first with 0 outs, so we'll keep you up to date. This is do or die for the Yanks. Red Sox could advance with a win. We got a little Metallica in the background. You heavy metal guy at all? You don't strike me as a heavy metal guy at all.
Not in the slightest.
Is Metallica heavy metal? I feel like they're considered heavy metal.
Yeah. I would say heavy metal for sure.
Maybe more like pop metal. It's not like Tool. I've got a lot of buddies that love Tool.
I do too.
You do love Tool.
Well, no, I have a lot of buddies who love Tool.
Yeah, I don't really get it.
Yeah, I don't.
The drummer's pretty good, I guess,
yeah,
but like
the pitch is kind of high.
Yes, the very high pitch. I feel like heavy metal's for angry people. Good workout music, maybe.
And good football, get amped up music.
Va-Tech style, Porter's Boys.
Just every high school football.
Every high school football. Every high school football. All right. Let's see. We're talking. Okay, we've done the West Virginia thing. I don't think we need to dig in there anymore. Utah football welcomes in Arizona State. There was coming up in 2 Saturdays. It is a late kick, 8:15. You referenced there is something. I know a lot of people like the early kick so they can kind of go to the game and then do their thing. If you don't have like honeydew obligations or kids that are playing soccer or whatever, football, I feel like there's something extra special about Rice Eccles at night. There's a little extra juice in that stadium with night kicks.
I agree, and it's still pretty during the day, but I mean, I think night kicks in general, like fans get more amped up. If you think about some of the big SEC type games like Death Valley at LSU is known to be kind of crazy at night. I've only been to night games at Autzen, and Autzen's always very loud.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to night games at Husky Stadium and day games at Husky Stadium. I'll say day games at Husky Stadium are awesome because you're right on the lake.
Sure,
and when it's night, it's spectacular. But I just think, yes, I think fans consciously or subconsciously feel like they have maybe more of an effect at night.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they get a little rowdier.
Yeah, so it's a late kick. I believe it is an ESPN telecast. Of course, it is. ESPN will have that game at 8:15. We'll have 10 hours of game day coverage for you. Porter gets rolling at about 4:15, and then Bill, Scott, and Sly will have the call for you. So there was not a consensus preseason pick to win the thing this year. We also did not have the preseason Big 12 media poll because we all blew it a year ago. But it feels like, and this is inexact, but if you polled everybody and took the Vegas line into account, Arizona State was as close to anybody else as being the preseason favorite to win the thing based off of what they were able to do a year ago. Obviously, the Cam Scatterboot kid, that loss is huge. Both Utah fans and BYU fans know that. I mean, he embarrassed both teams, and he just was impossible to tackle. I read a piece on him that when he was a kid, he used to put pads on and run into telephone poles. Is that the most least surprising thing you've ever heard?
Yeah, that tracks.
But Arizona State, after I'd say an underwhelming start to the season, they go to Starkville and lose to Mississippi State, who might be one of, if not the worst team in the SEC. Right now, Mississippi State, let's see. They lost to Tennessee. Their wins are over a bunch of bad teams. They should have beat Tennessee. So maybe that loss wasn't as bad as we thought. Northern Arizona, Texas State. But in back-to-back weeks, they go to Waco. They beat Baylor. Then they beat TCU at home. I don't know what the spread is going to be for Utah, Arizona State. If I had to guess, I think it'll be similar to Texas Tech, that Vegas just gives Utah some points because they're at home. But through 4 games, what sort of statement, if anything at all, has Arizona State made? The last couple of weeks, too, do you think they're back in consideration as one of the better teams in the Big 12?
I mean, cliche, showed the heart of a champion last week against TCU. I mean, TCU's good, and it looked like TCU was going to pull away with that game, but Arizona State came back. I mean, listen, anytime you have a really good quarterback and really good playmakers, no matter where you are, you're going to have a shot. And Sam Leavitt showed last year that he was kind of the breakout star of the conference a year ago. And if he's healthy, if Jordan Tyson's healthy, their defense is okay. Like that is a team to be reckoned with. So, who'd they play before TCU?
They played Baylor and Waco.
Oh, that's right.
And they won a close one, 27-24.
Yeah, at the horn. They hit the field goal. So, Yeah, I mean they're more battle tested than Utah easily.
Yeah, they are.
I mean there's no way around it. So you're going to be playing a team that knows each other better, that has been in big games together, that has won a Big 12 title together. This will be, I mean, you could make an argument. Sports Talk Radio.
Do it.
This might be a more difficult game for Utah than Texas Tech.
You think so?
Just because there's more on the line. That would be my main.
Yeah, that's fair. Who has the best win in conference? Is Texas Tech coming to Salt Lake and really taking it to Utah? Is that the best conference win?
Yeah.
I mean, Iowa State beat Iowa, and the opening win that you were at in Ireland against Kansas State. It feels like the best conference win so far is probably Tech and Salt Lake.
I think so. Yeah, and a lot of the teams considered to be contenders haven't really faced off yet.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'd probably say Tech over Utah, and probably ASU coming back against TCU.
Big double play ends the inning, but the Red Sox put 2 on the board, and now it's 2-2 as we head to the bottom of the third. So the Yankees blown it once again. All right, moving over now to what we've seen from BYU, and you are very familiar with Colorado's program. Prior to last Saturday, BYU had only given up 16 points all year. They give up 14 points in the first quarter. They're down 14-0. You could sense a little bit of a panic. The defense settles in. Colorado couldn't do anything after the first quarter. And I'll say that I don't want to just say for a freshman, but Bear has 10 touchdowns accounted for with 0 turnovers. And I didn't know this until I read it in the Trib. No BYU quarterback has ever done that to start the year. 10 touchdowns accounted for without turning the ball over. I kind of still feel the same way about BYU that I do about a lot of these teams that I don't know how good they are, but they've passed every test so far that's been thrown at them. So where are you at with BYU after 4 games?
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. They have played who's on their schedule. They've won different ways, which I think helps a young quarterback to learn different ways to play in various types of games. This might be BYU's best defense under Kalani, which is saying something because they've been pretty good the last couple of years. And, I mean, yes, Bear is a freshman, but if you look around him, he still has a lot of talented guys to throw to, like Chase Roberts, L.J. Martin, the Hagan kid. They are pretty deep at receiver as they have been under Aaron Roderick as OC. So, am I waiting for the other shoe to drop? Yes, because that's what happens with all quarterbacks, especially freshman quarterbacks. But all you can do is game plan and execute for who you're going up against. And so far, they've passed every test, as you've said. The West Virginia game, in theory, should be a roll. But then they get into their meat of the schedule because I know that they have Utah, they have – I think ASU.
So they're at Arizona after West Virginia.
Yeah, okay, got it.
And that game could get tricky.
Yeah.
Arizona's one of the they're like 5 teams right in the middle where you're kind of like you could talk yourself into them if you wanted to.
Right.
Arizona feels like one of them. But then they go Utah at home, at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, home versus TCU.
Yeah. That is your murderer's row of the season for BYU.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you can get through the next couple of weeks unscathed, then you're entering the rivalry game for a second straight year unbeaten, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, like I guess you can say underestimate BYU under Kalani at your own peril. But they just look like a team that knows who they are.
4-0 for the second straight year, 4th time in 10 years under Kalani. And, I wouldn't be stunned if they went to Arizona. I don't worry about West Virginia. BYU opened up as a 20.5-point favorite. That line has actually moved towards West Virginia, but only because it's so big. It's 18.5, so they'll handle West Virginia. And then I think they'll go on the road and beat Arizona. Do you have any thoughts on Arizona at all? I mean, as far as that type of challenge?
I haven't watched him. The Fafita kid a couple years ago was great, but he took a little bit of a step back last year. Don't know. I mean, they are better than they were last year under Brent Brennan, but we'll see.
So if BYU beats West Virginia, which we're expecting, and if they go on the road and beat Arizona, which I think they'll do, and Utah beats Arizona State, is it conceivable that both teams are in the top 20 when we head down to Provo?
Ooh. I think Utah might have some work to do.
Maybe crack top 25 if
Top
you beat
25,
Arizona. Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think. I mean, it depends on how good Tech's next couple weeks are too.
Yep.
Because that loss is going to be a smudge for that team for a while.
They've got Tech has Houston at home. No, excuse me, Houston on the road this Saturday, and then Kansas at home.
Yeah.
Tech's schedule isn't that tough.
No, it's not. They might. I think they probably have the easiest remainder of the schedule for any contender in the conference.
They do go to Tempe.
Okay.
And they do go to K-State, but they get BYU at home. Tech might stay clean.
They could.
I mean,
but their question is who's going to be the quarterback? Because Baron Morton, Joey McGuire said this week will be the starter again. But after the way Will Hammond played in Salt Lake, it's how long can you afford to potentially have struggles if Morton isn't able to return to his peak self?
Yeah, I think what you saw here from the Hammond kid, LDS kid too, by the way, which I didn't know.
Yeah, and his dad grew up here, played high school football here.
Where did Will grow up?
I think he grew up in the Austin area.
Oh, okay. Did BYU try? I would imagine BYU tried to recruit him.
I didn't hear about whether or not Utah or BYU were in on him, but a lot of big, the who have you of SEC and Big Ten and Big 12s were after him.
Yeah. Interesting thing to consider. We were talking about this earlier because Bear, as a freshman, has really, I think, shown some poise. The new in vogue term is stoicism. I don't know if people are. I don't know if people are reading the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius all of a sudden, but it seems like the European Ryder Cup team was stoic, and people are talking about these young quarterbacks as stoic. They've got the Ryder Lions kid coming in 2 years, right? I think Ryder's doing one of those, like, hey, you're a really good athlete, so you only have to serve 1 year mission.
Oh, really?
I think so. Okay. At least that's what I read. And then, maybe Bear plays for 2 years. Because, look, these are only high school highlights. The Ryder Lions highlights he looks like he's a serious, serious player.
Yeah.
And I would imagine he had his choice of schools that if you're committing anywhere, when you're that type of prospect, it has to come with some sort of like, hey, when you land here, you are our starting quarterback. If Bear is awesome for 2 years and Ryder comes in, what do you think that looks like?
Well, we would have to define levels of awesome. Because if Bear's a true freshman this year, and then next year, you would have a incumbent junior who, in theory, had 2 good seasons under his belt, and then the 5-star kid coming in. I mean, in a conventional world, Bear's going to be your starter. Like, no, there's no question about it. If he's able to continue to, in theory, be a successful starting quarterback at BYU. But yeah, I mean, that's a wrinkle, but that's a good wrinkle to have, and it's proof that Aaron Roderick knows what he's doing with quarterbacks.
Can I ask you a question about Shedeur Sanders?
Oh, sure.
Because you spent some time in Boulder when Shedeur was the quarterback. So the Browns today have named Dylan Gabriel as their starter. They're benching Joe Flacco, who's like my age. It's odd that he was playing anyway. Shedeur made himself available to the media, but refused to speak words. He did like a caricature meme type thing. I don't know what the term is.
Apparently, Adam Schefter reported that he was clapping back, so to speak, at Rex Ryan, who went off on him on First Take earlier this week, just making fun of how Rex was going at him.
But how do you do that if you're not using your words?
I don't know.
Is he just kind of an odd duck?
It's an interesting move for sure. It might work in college. I don't think it will work in the pro circles in the NFL. I don't know why the Cleveland Browns decided to go down this road after they picked a guy in the 3rd round in Dylan Gabriel, who is kind of polar opposite of Shedeur Sanders personality-wise. But, yeah, it's odd. It kind of reminds me of the LeVar Ball days when Lonzo was coming into the league and LeVar was kind of everywhere. But yeah, I do think Shedeur Sanders is a good quarterback. That's the craziest part is like watching him in depth at Colorado the last couple of years. Like, he is good, and like I think you can make an argument that he deserves a shot to play somewhere. But it seems like these types of things will undoubtedly rub his own front office the wrong way and other front offices, because the NFL suffers fools, but there's a line for everybody.
So the tweet, and let's bring in our resident young person. Is Porter in studio? Oh, yeah, he's there.
What's up?
Maybe Porter can help us out here. So the tweet from Schefter, after the Browns named Dylan Gabriel their new starting quarterback, Shedeur Sanders reacted with a full M-I-M.
Like he's miming.
Oh, like he's pantomiming.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess Chris took care of
Resident
it.
old.
Did you? Is this like are young people doing this? Is this
I don't
like
think so.
Okay.
I mean, I'm also not the person to ask for young people things, but Shedeur's. When you said odd duck, I'll agree with that because he's number one, being brought up in a particular environment, right, with Dion and co. But he does some odd stuff like this. He was really rude at Big 12 or Pac-12 Media Day once,
Yes,
or Big 12 Media Day rather.
Yes, he was, yeah.
There is stuff where Shedeur gets this like unfair critique from a lot of folks based on how he says stuff, what he says. But then there's also this side of Shedeur that really brings it upon himself by going out on a limb and kind of being a weirdo.
Yeah, to CK's point, Schefter followed up. Shedeur Sanders' pantomiming today was in response to Rex Ryan criticizing him earlier in the week. I don't know what Rex said. Rex is kind of an odd duck himself. But Shedeur is now QB3, even though the starting job goes to Dylan Gabriel. So I guess Joe Flacco's your backup. Anyway, nobody cheers for the son of a famous father. Chris, I think. Nobody?
Okay.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Noted.
All right, before I set you loose, massive 3 points for the lads.
Bigger match on the horizon.
Over the weekend against Austin. Are you going to get heated if I bring up the Rapids, the Rocky Mountain Cup?
I'll keep it together.
I know. Are you believing? Are we standing up? Are we going to stand up on our feet and shout it out, Real? Are they going to get in the play-in game?
I don't even remember what requires of getting in the play-in game.
You got to finish in the top 9.
Oh, okay.
And they're 1 point back, I think, with a game in hand on like San Jose and Dallas.
I know you have to close out the year at Seattle and at St. Louis.
Correct, and I don't think they're going to have Diego for the Seattle game.
Oh, because of U.S. national team stuff?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Gozo's gone for the U20 World Cup.
U20s, yep.
Hayda's
been called up as well.
Okay, so I'm going to say no. They might be Colorado this weekend, but too many drop points. I think I saw somewhere that these are this is the most amount of regular season losses that RSL has had since the inaugural season in 2005.
Really?
Yeah.
When we were relying on Dipsy Selawani to score goals.
Tiger Fitzpatrick.
My guy. RSL 37 points, 1 point back of Dallas and San Jose. Game in hand, kids, term on both San Jose and Colorado. If they win on Saturday, they will move into a tie with Colorado and potentially move past San Jose. But they're going to have to win one of the final two, either Seattle or St. Louis on the road.
Yeah, and Seattle is always a tough place to play. They're one of the better teams in the West, but I think they have some injury issues. Just this team has not been consistent. They haven't been good. They're not good at one thing. And I think you can say that anytime there's a team that's not good at a single thing, that means that they likely should not be a playoff team. But it is MLS.
It is MLS. They're not good at home anymore.
No.
I mean, it used to be a place where teams feared. Nobody fears coming in.
That team's long gone.
Why do you think that's dissipated the way it has?
Leagues changed. Style of play. Olave, the verb, no longer.
Borlave?
He's on the staff.
He is.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, they seem like a bunch of passengers to me, and I think you have to find some folks who want to drive the car.
What do you think? And I'll let you go because I know we've got Leo at home after this. The off season. I am told that tremendous changes have taken place in the front office. They were waiting to hear an official announcement for. There will be one voice that is really kind of the president of soccer, the president of everything. Shout out, Sepp.
Is his name on the building?
I have no comment to that. And we'll have to wait for an official announcement. I mean, I was told this was coming months ago, so I don't know what's going on. But the Millers did spend in the summer. I go back to the 2 games they played against LAFC where they just got their brains beaten in.
I mean, Sonny probably should have had a hat trick in both games.
And they spent more on him than RSL has spent on their entire roster.
Correct.
So the bottom line is this. It ties back to what we were talking about with Texas Tech. Like, if you are not willing to spend, and I'm not saying spend more than everybody. I'm saying don't be one of the bottom 5 or 6 clubs. If you're not willing to write checks, then let's just go, what are we doing here? But the Millers did spend some money in the transfer window to bring in some players. So what do you think the offseason looks like for RSL?
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. If RSL, I think regardless of if they make the play-in, I think you should see a pretty significant roster overhaul. Probably guys that have been here a long time that have no longer been able to play at the capacity that they used to once upon a time. Probably have to figure out a way to get Diogo Gonçalves off the books because that's been a failure. Got to see how your guy Victor Olatunji continues to adapt and Ruwan Cruz. It's a fascinating spot they find themselves in because in theory there are spots that are solidified where you could make an argument like, with Ojeda and Anelli, they might have the best central midfield tandem in the league. But when the ball turns over, those guys have been nowhere to be found in recent weeks. I mean, it is the fast breaks for other teams, the breakaways, the counterattacks,
the counters, if you will,
as we say in the Checketts household,
Indeed.
have been rampant. Mm-hmm. So, lots of questions, and I don't know how many answers they have right now.
Shout out John Paul and Corey. Fun to spend some time with you up at the wedding.
Congrats to our lovely new husband and wife.
You said you could cut up a rug, and you proved it on the dance floor.
Proof of concept.
So proof of concept. Chris Camerani, phenomenal dancer. Good to see you.
Good to see you, bro.
All right, well, welcome in Ryan from the Dish Professionals. Give them a call at 801-424-DISH. Move over to Dish if you're a sports fan. Trust me. And then you'll save a bunch of money. Bottom line, 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
It is the bottom line. It's the quickest way to put money back in your pocket. Plus, get a better overall experience. Right now with Dish, they've got such a fantastic receiver. It's integrated completely into streaming, Amazon Video Prime and YouTube and ESPN Plus. They're like channels. It's simple and easy. And so to have access to all your content and your DVR and your recording everywhere you go, plus be able to just flip back and forth, it makes it so nice. And with the current promotion Dish has, you get the first 3 months of their top package, which is well over 400 channels, free. Plus, you get a 2-year promotion and price guarantee, and we'll also throw in the NFL Red Zone and the multi-sports pack free for 3 months or 6 months. Great opportunities right now. If you call up, you'll lower your bill, better equipment, and we also can help with the internet. This really helps with those cable customers that are trapped in the bundle. Guys, there's probably 2 or 3 very comparable services available at your address that are going to save you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It's so easy to do. Plus, we've got some great tricks where all your internet-connected devices will just work on the new internet, so it's not a headache. You just pay less money. You get a better internet solution and a better TV solution. Call us today, 424-DISH. It's 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Professionals. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. The final hour of the program on this Wednesday afternoon comes your way next right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get a Drive at 5 time. About 8 minutes past the hour, 5 o'clock on a lovely, beautiful Wednesday afternoon. We got some chilly weather coming your way this weekend, including some snow up in the mountains. That's right, October is here. But as it is every day, it is good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass. Commute home on a Wednesday afternoon gets rolling right now. You are halfway through that work week. You are one day closer to the weekend. You're one day closer to football, week 5 of the NFL. We'll get going tomorrow night at SoFi as the San Francisco 49ers are in Los Angeles to take on the Rams, and the Niners will do so without Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has been ruled out for the second time in 3 weeks. Mac Jones gets the starting job for the Niners as the Rams will try to continue their hot start. Unfortunately, the news surrounding the NFL more or less is about injuries. Now, Lamar Jackson has not been ruled out officially, but it looks like he is trending towards not playing. And as I referenced, Brock Purdy out for the Niners. Good news if you're a Commanders fan. It looks like you're going to have your star starting quarterback, Jaden Daniels, back under center after he's been dealing with some injuries of his own. So a lot of injuries throughout the course of the early part of the season. Two quarterbacks along the landscape of pro football. Joe Burrow, of course, out until December. The Bengals look really bad with Jake Browning under center. The Cleveland Browns made a change today as Joe Flacco is going to the bench, and Dylan Gabriel will be your starter. Shedeur Sanders is listed as the number 3 quarterback in Cleveland. So some news broke that way. Major League Baseball playoffs, of course, the wild card round underway. We have gone to the bottom of the 4th in the Bronx, where the Yankees and the Red Sox are deadlocked at 2 apiece. The Yankees took a 2-run lead after the bottom of the 2nd. The Red Sox tied it up in the 3rd. And now we go to the top of the 4th, where Giancarlo Stanton grounded out again, because that's what he does in the playoffs. Guardians beat the Tigers earlier 6-1. Padres took care of the Cubs 3-0. Your late-night game, the Reds are going to try to do something to stop that machine as the Dodgers took care of them easily. Shohei Ohtani with a leadoff home run last night. So game 2 at Dodger Stadium, 7 o'clock on ESPN, Dodgers and the Reds. It is a bye week for the University of Utah. It's a bye week for Utah State. BYU welcomes in West Virginia to Provo coming up on Friday night for a late kick. BYU opened up as a 20.5-point favorite, and the line is settled in right now. BYU favored by 18.5. 8:30 kick time for BYU West Virginia. And, of course, Utah back at it with a really big game coming up next week in Salt Lake City. They're going to welcome in Arizona State. Arizona State coming off back-to-back weeks where they had Big 12 wins over Baylor and TCU. Don't forget, kickoff 2 Saturdays from now at Rice-Eccles Stadium will be at 8:15 Mountain Time, and that game is televised on ESPN. Our pregame coverage with Porter will begin at 4:15 on Saturday. We have 10 hours of game day coverage for you when Utah football is back in action. Utah Jazz Media Day a couple of days ago. Training camp across the landscape of pro basketball opened up yesterday, and we have some Mammoth preseason hockey as well. A little bit of everything going on. Talked to Rex Hoggard a little bit earlier from the Golf Channel about the fallout from the Ryder Cup and what's next for Team USA. Who will be the next captain? Feels like a lot of momentum is moving towards one Eldrick Tiger Woods. Interesting to hear Paul Pugmire on the show yesterday drop Theo Epstein as a possibility, but of course something has to give as the Ryder Cup goes to Europe once again. Sarah Todd stopped by to talk a little Jazz basketball. We're high speed ahead of preseason action. RSL welcomes in Colorado coming up. It is the final home match for Real Salt Lake, 1 point out of the play-in game. And Colorado RSL will start at 7:30 Mountain Time in Sandy coming up on Saturday. All right, we have filled our Metallica quotient for the week. Are you? I don't.
Sure.
I don't know that I know this about you. I know that you're an old school country music fan. I know that you're bumping Zach Bryan on the rag.
No,
you're not. Heavy metal move the needle for you at all? Are you a fan?
Not really. Metallica is one that's a little different. That was one of my dad's favorite bands, so he was always rocking with Metallica. And then, as I mentioned, the Virginia Tech connection. So I'm always, playing some Enter Sandman. I have no objections to Metallica. But yeah, my taste in music is usually a lot slower, a lot less instruments and a lot less noise. Tool, you mentioned Tool earlier.
I've got some friends that are like crazy into Tool, and I think it's weird.
So here's the thing with Tool.
You have a Tool take.
They're just like really good technically when it comes to metal. Like their guitar player is unbelievable.
That's what I've heard.
Their drummer is unbelievable. Like they're too fast and obnoxious and, again, too much noise for me as far as like just listening to music. But technically speaking, they're just really good at what they do. What they do is just not my taste.
The song you just played was on the soundtrack of that movie, This Is the End.
There you go.
Which is a really underrated, hilarious movie. It came out in like 2013. Are we allowed to talk about James Franco? Is he still canceled? Can we just say he was in the movie, or is that...
Yeah, I think you can separate the artist from the movie.
Well, you never know.
Master of Puppets, though.
Master of Puppets, This Is the End, 2013. I'll say the first hour and 15 minutes of This Is the End is elite, and then it just gets really weird and loose at the end. But like the Michael Cera character, Jonah Hill kills it. The funny thing about that movie is you read about it later, and they were actually... they were exaggerating who they are in real life, but apparently, like, Jonah really is that much of, like, an arrogant jerk, and Michael Cera is this undercover, like, mean dude that nobody knows about. Phenomenal watch for about an hour and 15. Then it gets really weird at the end.
I was going to say, this is the one where they're, like, all kind of playing themselves, all these stars at the end of the world, yeah. Yeah, it's a funny one.
They're at Franco's house, and suddenly the rapture's coming or whatever, and Jay Baruchel is trying to warn them.
Okay.
When Danny McBride wakes up and makes breakfast and like does the Danny McBride thing, that is like one of the funniest cameos in any movie I've seen in the last like 10, 15 years. Because I'm a McBride guy, as you know.
Yeah, he's funny.
Danny McBride does something, I'm going to give it a shot. All right, well, it is that time of year where there's a little bit of everything going on. You made it to halfway through your work week. Week 5 of the NFL gets rolling tomorrow. A Brock Purdy-less San Francisco 49er team will be at SoFi to take on the Rams. And then BYU on Friday. Weird to have a Saturday in October with no local college football. But we will say goodnight. Porter, what comes our way on a Thursday edition of the show?
On a Thursday edition of the program, we'll continue the college football conversation. Kyle Bonagura, Dave Bartu, kind of two very different...
to say the least.
Two college football guests that are just very different somehow. Pablo Mastroeni will stop by the program. We'll talk some NFL with Lindsey Rhodes, and our friends from Handy and Handy will stop by. So a bunch going on a Thursday.
Dave Bartu might be on mushrooms hunting elk, and Kyle's probably just writing about college football, so you never know.
It's an existence that, sometimes I wish I was hanging out with Dave Bartu. I'll just say that.
He seems like a very interesting guy. So that will be a very interesting show. So join us for that. Special thank you today to Rex Hoggard, Sarah Todd, Jason Shepard, Chris Comrani. For any of the sound you may have missed, go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's the best way to listen to the station. It's the way I do it. ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. It is called Breaking News, The Drive with Spence Checketts. It is available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. It actually helps out if you have time to do it. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying good night. Have a great Wednesday evening. We'll talk to you on a Thursday drive. And as always, you can catch that right here on ESPN 700.